you're published.
I love to read and write and worked on the college newspaper. But it was very hard to get published.
Yes,
I still
it is
can't
very
quite
difficult.
believe that I've published six.
It's wonderful.
Yeah.
It's awesome. So are you how do you fall in line with the rest of us? Are you a pantser? Are you a plotter? Do you run?
Yeah, I'm not a plotter at all. I wish I could. I'd save myself a lot of time. But the book I just finished was very different from everything else.
You had us a new book.
New book.
It'll be out next May, hopefully. But it's very different in that it's the first book I've written that is not kind of from within. It wasn't. It was a story I'd been hearing about for years that I was interested in. It has nothing to do with me, and that kind of forced me to write differently and to do not plotting, because I'm not capable of plotting, but to think more about technique and craft.
I've noted, you'll see with authors, and if you have like a favorite author that you've read for years, like I'm a big fan of Deborah Harkness and Karen Slaughter, and both of them, you can see when they've hit their stride in both their books. Dr. Harkness, it's like her second book. You can see she just folded and melted into it, and she found her path. And Karen Slaughter, you can see that with like her Clark County series. Like the second or third book, you can see she just kind of rolls into it, and you can tell when authors find the rhythm and it starts smoothing slowly. Sometimes it's their first book, sometimes it's like their last book. It just depends.
I really liked the like low-key shade that's in the book of, I don't get why everybody wants to be an author. So was that something that happened at the bookstore where you worked? Like, was this the question, like, why does everybody want to be a writer? Like,
and it's a bigger thread in the forthcoming book as well, because the protagonist is a frustrated novelist and a writing teacher. So,
who is it?
Right. So she has all of these stories from her writing students stuck in her head. But yes, I think some of that's just my life between teaching writing and then working at a bookstore and being a writer. Everyone I'm married to a writer, so everybody in my life.
So your life is writing. So that's all you talk about.
Yeah, it is. It's a little too much sometimes. So.
Okay, so what are you reading right now then? Let's not talk about writing, let's talk about reading.
Oh boy, what am I reading? Well, I just finished, the last book I read is someone who will be at the festival today. She's presenting, but Michelle Brofman. She has a book coming out in June called Swimming with Ghosts. And it's set in... I think it's set in Northern Virginia.
That is a Molly book, just by the title.
It sounds like
it's about a swim club, like a suburban swim club, but the characters, kind of adults behaving badly, and kids swim team, and it's very good. It's very good.
That sounds good. We need to add that to our list.
Yeah. Swimming with Ghosts.
Yeah. But I'm mostly reading manuscripts. I'm reading a manuscript for a friend right now, and then I have my class. So that's when I say I don't read enough. I read a lot, but I'm reading for work.
You need a smut break.
Smut break.
I'll DM you some smut suggestions.
I like Emily Henry, so.
Yes, love Emily Henry. Nikki Payne, who's here, we just finished with her.
Pride and Protest.
Pride and Protest is really good.
So good.
It's good smut too.
Good smut.
Yeah. So one of your books, Acceptance, and that was the third book you wrote?
I think so, yes.
Okay. Yes. It was made into a movie. Joan Cusack stars in it. I love her. I love her. So what was that process like? You have a writer's credit on IMDb.
No big deal.
So I was like, wondering what it was like.
Well, I was not a writer on there. I was a consultant. So if I have that credit, I'm not aware, and thank you.
You do. She does. I looked.
We fact checked.
I was a consultant, and I think that was a good thing. I was advised that sometimes authors can get too close to the material, and it complicates the process, and that was fine with me because I have no experience screenwriting, and I think it is a very different skill, and I like mostly what the screenwriter did, and I think she was able to have enough distance from the book that she could sort of play with it in a way that wouldn't have occurred to me. So she pulled out one of the characters who had not been a main character. She'd just been one of, I think I probably had 3 points of view there as well, and made her the main character, and her voice kind of narrated the whole movie. I think she made it funnier than I would have been able to do with that
with
that
what you,
format.
yeah.
Well,
yeah.
I haven't seen the movie, but I did watch the trailer, and it seemed like, what's the girl from Parenthood who was also in
Mae Whitman.
Mae Whitman.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So Mae Whitman's
Mae.
like kind of
Yeah.
the star.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like what they did from what it looks like is they made it more geared towards a younger crowd than like being more of an adult
Gen
contemporary.
X.
Yeah. But we love Mae Whitman.
We love
Yeah,
Mae.
she was
She's awesome.
very good.
Yeah.
At the same time she was doing that, she was filming In Treatments, if you remember that. And
Yeah.
she was, I believe this was a while ago, but she was the therapist's rebellious daughter. So she had she had a streak in her hair, and I think that was from filming Acceptance.
Yeah.
So I was kind of proud of seeing that.
Nice. Yeah, she was. Lauren Graham bought the rights to a book we really love, which is called The Royal We, and it was supposed to be made into a movie, and Mae Whitman was supposed to be the star, and the rights have lapsed because pandemic changed all that, and but we were pretty disappointed because we were like, Lauren Graham and Mae Whitman, this is gonna be amazing. So
and then I noticed the dad, I won't remember his name, but he popped up in Mad Men. So I was
cool.
very excited. I feel like these are my people now.
Yeah, I mean,
They
they
were
are
in my
your
movie.
people. I mean, you made them into the world.
Yeah.
You got to talk about your characters like real people and
Yeah.
turn them into real people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not a lot of us get to do that as authors.
Yeah. So
did
It
you
is
get to be on
freaking
set?
awesome.
I never went on
Oh,
set,
okay.
so I did not really have very much to do with it. They sent me the final script, and
Yeah.
I suggested some changes, some of which they listened to, and some
In other
of
words,
which they
they were like,
didn't.
"Nah."
So I didn't go down. They filmed in Louisiana, and I wish I'd gone down, but I had 3 kids, and
Yeah.
That's tough.
they also were not encouraging me to come
Yeah.
down. I think there was some drama on the set, and I think
Aw,
they
well, that's
just
a
didn't
bummer.
want another person
Yeah.
there.
Yeah.
They need more help. Like they need a
Right.
hole in the head.
Right.
Right. So what else can you tell us about your new book? It comes out in March.
May,
May.
hopefully.
May.
Hopefully.
Sorry.
I mean, if it's any good. I just turned it in. I haven't
Okay.
heard from my editor
So
yet.
working title or is it titled?
It has a title. It's called Real Life and Other Fictions. And it actually
I like that.
begins.
I do
It's
too.
got a slightly local setting now that I think about it. It begins on the Chesapeake Bay Bridge. That's
Yep.
where it opens.
Yep.
And it has to do with a woman whose family died in a bridge collapse in West Virginia in the 1960s, and that's a real bridge collapse, and the Silver Bridge collapse, and that spawned the myth of the Mothman.
Yes.
Yeah. Or I don't know if
Tom's
Tom's
nodding.
over,
Like, I
Tom's
know what
over
you're
there
talking
nodding.
about.
Yeah.
Tom's in.
Yeah.
You got Tom in. So either way, you're
That's
coming.
great. Yeah, and I may have not used the right language there. I could have things thrown at me by people because the myth, it's not clear that it's a myth. I mean, there may really be a Mothman.
Right.
But the story
Right.
of the Mothman became
The
known.
legend, the
Yeah,
urban legend.
Yes.
I love stories
Yeah.
based on urban legend.
Yeah.
Because you never.
Tom's still hunting for Sasquatch, so it's fine.
Yeah, well,
like,
I talk
they-
about cryptids, and I have
Yeah.
a cryptozoologist.
Like there
in the
was
book,
literally a show that you watched for years about finding Bigfoot, and they never found him, babe.
Yeah.
They never found him.
But it's fascinating.
Tom's over there smiling. He goes, "We got time. We got time."
It's fascinating stuff, and I don't solve any
No.
mysteries, but I'm really interested.
It
yeah,
is
it's
very
really
interesting.
All
That's
that,
very
so,
interesting.
yeah.
That's definitely a.
The community college in Lake City,
Uh-huh.
they had a cryptology class
Yeah,
that they
they did.
offered, which I thought was really kind of cool.
Yeah.
So yeah, sorry, keep going
Yeah.
about your new book.
Yeah, no, it was a different process though, as I was saying before, because I do not have any connection to that material. So it usually when I write, I've already got the story in my head.
An
course, with
outline
this
of some
book.
sort, yeah.
Yeah, and I'm just kind of with this book. I was writing about the vacuum. That the vacuum cleaner was the inspiration, and in this, I had to really think more about story structure, novel structure, character development, and that was probably good for me to
Yeah.
take a step back.
I think
People
it's
get
good.
really aggressive with that vacuum cleaner.
Yeah.
Violent with the
Yeah.
vacuum cleaner.
Yeah, vacuum cleaners are underrated as comic
Yes.
devices. So
I thought it was good. This copy of the book that I have has a reader's guide in the back, and one of the questions is like, "Is there an inanimate object that you feel like would be a good character?" And to me, I was like, "Yeah, vacuum cleaner seems right."
Yeah.
I think oven as well because. My husband does most of our cooking now. He's a stay-at-home dad. He's retired Coast Guard, and he does most of our cooking. But our oven is frequently a thing that I'm like, You're just driving me insane.
Yeah.
Microwave, that's the other one too, I would say.
Yeah.
Microwaves drive me insane.
Yeah.
But now our 6-year-old can use it, so it's a little bit better. I'm like,
Yeah.
go make your own pizza, son.
We have a robot vacuum that has a mind of its own.
Yeah. The robot vacuum comes in this book towards
Yeah.
It has a mind of its own. You'll hear it just like out of nowhere in the middle of the night, and you're like, "Ma'am, you're unplugged."
Yeah.
It's bedtime.
Yeah.
Bedtime robot.
Well, I'm just imagining. This hadn't occurred to me before, but with AI,
Oh,
you
yeah.
know, pretty soon
Yeah.
the appliances are just gonna
They will.
take care of
Yeah,
us.
we
yeah.
bought a new dishwasher and a washing machine. That was our anniversary present to each. We're grown-ups now, right? So we're running on 13 years. So last year we bought new appliances, and I was like, we could get a new fridge too. And I was like, why do we need fridges that like text us? Like, I don't know. I don't think I need to communicate with my fridge. We commune enough as it is.
Right. Clean me now.
Yes.
So, is there anyone you're excited to see here today as a reader
Yeah.
at the festival?
Yeah, I'm gonna try and catch Anthony Mara. And
Yep.
Yeah.
We're interviewing him later today.
Yep.
Yeah,
Mhm.
he's in conversation with my friend Angie Kim, who moderated my first book event for Bookish
Very
people.
cool.
So
I love
I'll
that.
catch them. And then I'll see. who
Mara,
else. There's a lot
Mara's
of
book
good-
is very interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I haven't
We-
read his new one.
We
but-
met him last night as well. So
Mhm.
yeah,
Yeah.
we're at the author event. You were there.
Yeah, yeah.
It was really nice.
Yeah,
That's a good
but a lot of the other authors, well, he was also at Politics and Prose, but I've seen like a lot of these authors coming through
Yeah.
the bookstore
Yeah.
recently.
Well,
so,
yeah.
yeah.
Now,
A lot of people are local, so
Yes,
that helps.
exactly.
Is
Yeah.
this your first time at the Annapolis Book Festival?
No, I was recalling as I drove out here, I was here for my second novel, Rockville Pike. So that would
Okay.
have been a pretty long time ago, but it
And
was
what time is your panel today?
2:00.
2 o'clock.
Yeah.
And if you want to see Susan Call at her panel, 2 o'clock today. Anything else you want to tell us before we end for our session?
No,
That sounded like therapy.
Yeah.
This was-
Oh, yeah.
this was
How are
not-
you doing?
Not
Yeah.
to me therapy.
Do you have anything you want to talk about from this past week before we end our session?
Probably, but yeah.
We'll
when
do
you
that
turn off the
offline.
camera.
Yeah. Well, I have a listener's face, so.
Well, thank you again
thank
Yes,
you.
so
thank you
much for
joining
coming, giving your
us.
time.
Great. Yes.
Bookish People, this is the newest book. It is out now. And Susan Call. So
Thank
yeah,
you.
thank
Thank
you,
you,
everybody.
Susan.
Thanks so much.
We'll see you
Thank you.
soon.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
65.
What?
What?
Hi,
Hello,
everybody.
here.
We're still at the Annapolis Book Festival. We are back again. We are here with Addison Armstrong, author of The War Librarian.
Oh.
I put in our Instagram, I did a story about this book because this is so good, guys.
The
It's so
feels,
good.
guys. I have the feels.
So thank you so much for coming today.
No, thank
and
you. I'm
here
so
with us.
excited to be with y'all.
Oh my gosh,
God.
we are excited. Like
Big fans.
when-
It's contagious.
Yeah, it's like when we're both into a book, there's just a totally
Oh,
different
it's
vibe.
a vibe.
It's a totally different vibe. So, a little bit about
Addison.
dang it.
Okay.
Oh, there it is.
Addison is an elementary school teacher and author of historical fiction. She wrote her first book, The Lights of Luna Park, as a junior at Vanderbilt. No big deal.
No
Whatever.
big deal. Well, first of all,
Vanderbilt.
she was still a junior
at Vanderbilt.
and she was at Vanderbilt. So, you know.
Well, people act like that's so impressive, but I think it's much harder for people who have kids and who have, that's full time and
Yeah.
classes
Like,
are not.
even it's a hard school to get into, baby.
We have
You were-
we have an author friend, Francesca Zappia, who writes YA, and her first book was published when she was a senior in high school. And we're like,
What? Yes.
That's incredible.
Jessie,
What?
you know, baby. Yeah. And she's just like, whatever, it's not a big deal.
It's just what
It's
I
a big
do.
deal. So she graduated twice. You got married. War librarian. You currently live in Manhattan with your husband.
so
Been a
cool.
busy couple of years.
So cool.
You teach science and English in Brooklyn and
Yes.
continue to write historical fiction for
Yeah.
adults and children.
Yes.
I love that. Love
I
that.
love it. So why don't you give us a quick synopsis
Synopsis
of the
of-
book?
Of The War Librarian.
The
Okay.
War Librarian,
So
yeah.
it's dual timeline, which is my favorite thing to read. And the first timeline, as y'all know, is 1918. Emmeline is a librarian in DC. And through a series of events, she ends up all the way in France working as a hospital librarian or a war librarian. And what she does is prescribe books to the soldiers who are in this hospital. It's a base hospital, but it's very close to the front. It's serving more sort of as an evacuation hospital because there are just so many injuries coming through. And that's the first timeline. And she has to deal not only with the fact that she's in the middle of a war, but also all of this censorship that she's dealing with, which I'm sure we'll talk about a little bit more.
Yes, we will.
Yes, we will.
And it can go on for hours. As well as there's someone there who she knew as a child. So there's maybe a little bit of romance going on.
Possibly a smidge.
And then in the second timeline, it's 1976. It's here in Annapolis, and Kathleen is part of the first co-ed class at the Naval Academy, which, yes, it was rough.
Rough. I don't know how you wrote that without
it was
losing it.
painful. I
Yes.
mean, some of it you would think I would, I wouldn't believe it if I read it in a fiction book, but I read it in a memoir
I
of
can-
someone who,
yeah.
and
it
was
was
true.
in the Coast Guard.
Yes,
so
she was telling me boot
yeah.
camp, all that,
Yeah.
and
Yeah,
I just,
it's very triggering. So I will say that there
Yeah,
is
I
some
always do
stuff.
wanna give people
There
warning.
it is very triggering as someone that was in the military, but the accuracy, ma'am, chef's kiss,
Yeah.
Well,
as the
thank
kids
you.
say.
So she's dealing with that, and then also with some secrets from her past that are bubbling up.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
they intertwine somehow.
Yeah.
Somehow.
You're gonna have to read to find
Yeah.
out.
Yeah. And so I just want to say I am a librarian. So I have been a librarian. I was a teacher before. I'm now a public librarian. And I've been a member of ALA for my entire career. Did not know there were war librarians for ALA.
It's so bizarre.
I was like, I'm just going to fact check this right quick.
She made this up,
I was
right?
like, this can't be real. Prescribing books. And I was like, holy crap, we
Yeah.
really
It's
did
incredible.
that.
Yeah.
And I was like, so this is something I have to share. Historical fiction, not my jam.
I force it on her.
Yes, she does. I like contemporary fiction. I read a lot of romance. I read a lot of YA because I'm a children's librarian,
Right.
and so I read YA and children's books and, all over the gamut. My biggest complaint about historical fiction is I just feel like it needs more research.
Interesting.
The reason that I went and did a story about this book, the reason I was like texting our friend Katie and was like, you need to read this book, is I was like, I have not read a historical fiction book that is this well researched.
Yeah.
It is so in depth. It is so real. Like the power of your craft. Like I am so impressed. And I saw on Instagram, you were talking about how you were excited to be back here in Annapolis because you did your research.
Yes, only a little bit. It was closed for COVID most of the
Right.
time,
Okay.
closed to the public.
Yeah.
So I could not make it out here. So the bulk of my research for that timeline came from a book by Sharon Hanley Disher, who was in that first co-ed class. And I call it a memoir. That's not really true. It's fiction, but it's based on her experiences and
Realistic
the experience
fiction.
of other. Yeah. It's basically, she said, it's a composite of all of it. So everything that happens in the book happened to someone she knows. She made it one person.
And
or two
I'm not
characters.
surprised that that's true because,
Right. So that's where I got so much that I never would have. I mean, stupid things. I forget that these were 18-year-old boys.
Yeah.
Like their abuse is going to be of the stupid variety.
Right.
They're, the peanut butter jars before they pass it to you.
real.
She's real.
She was real.
At Book Besties, we talk about characters like
if
they're
they're
real
real
people.
humans, yes.
They are
Then
real
I fit,
people.
I fit right in
have
here.
birthed them into the world.
So that was like, I was fangirling to the
Yes.
beginning, y'all were saying earlier. And our tour guide was interesting. He had graduated the fall or the spring right before the girls started. So he was like, yeah, it was great. We had girls like long time overdue. And I was like, yes, but. So it was interesting that he maybe he would have been better.
His memory is a lot more whitewashed of the situation than everybody else's.
And he was great. He was very sweet, but it was just interesting that like he didn't have to live through it, so he didn't have to really know what was going on.
And what did you think? How did you research the other timeline where you're World War One?
So that one was a little bit
World War
harder.
I.
Yes, World War One. So there's not a whole lot about the librarians that actually went overseas. Most of them were in the camps here in the U.S. And most of the ones that went overseas actually went towards the very, very, very end of the war.
Yes.
One of the ones who actually did write letters and things that there is some to get from Mary. I don't know how to pronounce her name, which is embarrassing. Isum. But she was a librarian on the west coast of the U.S. and she ended up over there, and she actually landed on V-Day. So,
wow.
So I moved things up a little bit, which is realistic because there were YMCA volunteers, Red Cross volunteers that served as librarians. So for that research, I kind of had to pull from everything. It's like, this is what the YMCA huts looked like, so I'm reading about the YMCA activities. And then this is what librarians were dealing with censorship-wise in the U.S. If they refused to take the German language books off their shelves, they would get... they would resign. Totally by choice. And, so I was pulling from a lot of things. I also...
That's how the military rolls.
Yeah, there are a lot of tie-ins between the two timelines, just like thematically. Yeah. But the ALA has archives with pictures, which are amazing. I don't know if you came across those in your research.
There was some just on the website that was really cool to see.
Yeah.
And, so ALA, American Library Association, that's our national association. So check that out. Yeah.
And it's Library Week right now. So.
It is National Library Week.
But there are pictures of the nurses pushing carts through the hospitals, and the men have, their legs are bandaged and they're hanging from the ceiling, the legs, and, just crazy stuff. And so that, a lot of it from there, they have bulletins and meeting minutes published. And then a lot of newspapers asking for donations, asking for book donations. And then actually the list, the War Department memo of the banned books.
Oh, yeah.
Really
that actually leads into another really good question. Yeah. So book banning is the center, one of the centers of this book. It's a personal passion of mine because I'm a librarian, and I am 100% in favor of access to information of whatever information you want.
It is.
Right, exactly. No limitations. So I think that your book does a job presenting a reasonable argument for access to information. So how do you feel about book banning as an educator and a writer?
Yes, it's so relevant because people think of the writing and they don't usually think of the educating. But I grew up in Florida.
Yeah. Oh. Tom did too.
My husband's
luckily that is not where I teach right now, or I would be in a lot of trouble all the time.
She'd be very frustrated right now.
Yes. So, I mean, it's just insane. I totally agree with you 100%. Sure, there are things that kids should not read without guidance, without conversations, and without context.
Right.
But there aren't things that kids shouldn't read.
Right.
Those are two different issues.
Right.
And, people say, well, it's not really banned. It's just not at the library. Well, the library is the place where kids get books for free.
Right.
So, sure, you're only banning it for the kids who need it the most.
Right.
You know,
Well,
it was the only access they
In
had.
the U.S., no book has been banned universally.
Right.
What people don't always know is that when a book is challenged, that's the first step, right?
Mm-hmm.
So they make a request to whomever is housing that book. It can be a bookstore, it can be a children's library, it can be whatever, public schools,
library,
whatever.
public library, yeah.
At that point, it's automatically challenged. Someone has officially challenged
Mm-hmm.
it. Now, I'm not talking about those people that go to the school board meetings and just read the books that have the P word in it, and they're like, it says pussy. Okay, well, how about some context?
Right.
But this actually happened we live in a small town in Virginia, and that happened there. So, so I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about people that really fill out the documentation to say, we do not believe this book should be here. So now it's challenged. When it is actually removed from that space, it is a banned book.
Right.
So
It's no longer there.
you don't have it, it's banned.
Yeah.
It's banned from that place, even if
Exactly.
it's not banned universally. Yeah. And I thought it was really interesting because there's this librarian, the main character of your book, there's two main characters, but you've got Emmeline is a librarian who's being told you can't give them these books.
And that's what really gave me the story, right?
Yeah.
I was so fascinated by the fact that there were these war librarians, that the ALA teamed up with the War Department, and they thought that books were a priority in the middle of war.
Yeah.
Like, that was magical to me. I was enthralled by that. I was like, in what world?
Yeah.
Do they, look at COVID. They closed down, bookstores, libraries. They're not essential businesses. Well, in 1917, they thought they were. They thought these men need books.
Yes.
Whether they're in the hospital, whether they're on the front lines. And that was just so magical. And then in reading about all that, I found that list of banned books. And I was like, oh, that significantly reduces the magic.
I was shocked that
definitely
ALA
makes it
was
feel worse.
bending
Well,
to them.
yeah.
Because today,
It's 100%.
ALA will not bend.
No, absolutely
we
not.
will not bend. So I'm also a member of VLA because I'm from Virginia and I belong to Virginia Library Association. And like our main person there, she's constantly going to the state capitol and advocating for not banning books.
Right,
and
that's
why
the image I have now of the ALA,
Yeah,
which is fabulous. And that's what it should be.
That's what librarians are doing. We're fighting.
Right,
for
it's
this
not like
access.
sitting behind a desk telling people
Oh,
to hush.
no. If you think librarians still are wearing like their hair in buns, I mean occasionally mine's in a bun. If you think that we're still shushing people, you have not been in the library in a long time. I ran a messy play date just a couple of days ago and the room was completely demolished.
Destroyed.
Like you could tell the babies
See,
were
that's
there.
the best type of librarian.
Yes.
Yeah, we have a picture of me in the newspaper when I was like 3 at the library with my little sister at a pajama party, and we're God knows we were very loud.
Yes. Yes.
But yeah, so it was that banned book list that I was
Yeah.
like, okay, this is what I have to write about. I thought it was interesting. Now I'm hooked because it was just so ironic seeming that they would be providing these books and banning them. And of course, eventually, as I wrote it, I realized, it's not as ironic as it sounds. It actually makes a lot of sense because providing those books, the reason they do that is because they believe that books have power.
Yeah.
And they're banning the books because they think that they have power. But
the interesting thing is, a war later, we were talking about, the Nazis were banning books.
right.
And it's like,
Remember? And actually, the American Library in Paris had ovens that they said you can just stick them in there if you
Oh,
need to get.
God.
I know, it like hurts.
Oh, the pain.
And Emmeline had the same reaction. She was like, "I'm sorry, what did you say?"
Yeah.
We're gonna do what with the books?
But what? So
what?
yeah, so that sort of becomes one of the crux, the main theme. And
So Emmeline is your librarian, but you also have another main character. We have a woman trying to get into the
right,
an
Kathleen is in
academy
this.
for the first time ever, and I gotta know how much you cried because that being a former enlisted woman, I had to take brain breaks.
Yeah.
Putting myself in her shoes, feeling the way she's felt. I got harassed. I got, hazed, whatever you want to call it.
Hazed.
And it was the early 2000s.
excuse, yeah.
It's the early 2000s then. And
It's that boys will be boys excuse. I
Right.
hate that.
It just happens to
and
everyone.
while it wasn't as severe as she was facing,
It was there.
it was there. And women still are facing, the trouble and the problems women are facing today in the military, not so different. It's not as extreme. It's not as in your face. It's more behind doors, closed doors, and we just brush it under the rug now.
They're told not to talk about it.
Yep. And just pushed away. And for you to just blast it out there and remind everybody, hey,
This
Yeah.
happens.
Well, I
This
think that's,
fucking
you know,
happens.
that's what fits with that first timeline,
Right.
right? We're not going to censor it. We're not going to whitewash it.
Right.
We're not going to pretend
Right.
it's better
So-
than it was. And
How's your
I mean,
heart?
it was painful.
how's
It
your
was
heart?
painful
Because
to
this
write.
is hard.
Because it's 1976. This is not 6,000 years ago.
No.
Right.
Right? Like my uncle said, "Oh yeah, I remember when it went co-ed."
I mean,
Yeah.
it was just a few years before I was born.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like,
Like,
just a few years before
yeah.
I was born.
And
You know,
my oldest is reading it now. She's reading it for school. She's using it for her last book of the year. And she's reading the boot camp stuff. And she's like, you were born what year, Mom? And I go, 83. And so she does the math. And she's like, you didn't get yelled at. And I go, girl, you're going to get yelled at.
Yeah.
You're going to, when you join up, it doesn't matter if you go enlisted, officer,
Yep.
you have boobs and a vagina, they're going to treat you different.
Yep.
Yeah. Yes, it was so alarming. the things that-
I actually let Molly know ahead of time. I'm like, when you read this, be in a headspace
Yeah.
that you can take it. Because
Yeah.
I knew, you know, I haven't been to war as a librarian. I feel like I
And
go to
sometimes
war
it might
every
seem like
day
it, yeah.
as a librarian, but yeah. So it wasn't as that way for me. For me, it was like, oh my gosh, this is history of my profession that I
Yeah.
didn't know.
Right.
But I knew for Molly it would hit different.
Right.
And it's
yeah.
just,
Yeah, it's good. So you have a lot of positive feedback coming
Ma'am.
for this book.
Ma'am.
So how's that been? Like getting this like
It's exciting. It is really exciting, and
nerve wracking,
I-
I'm sure.
well, a lot of the bad feedback is my favorite actually. I had one person gave it a 1 star
Don't read
on
Goodreads.
Goodreads.
Don't read Goodreads.
I don't
Goodreads.
usually, but it popped up. She finished it without reading the whole thing
Oh.
because she expected a book about women librarians and in the military.
that's what it
Okay,
was.
I don't
that's
know.
what it was.
But instead, she got a social justice warrior talking about race and sexism.
What do you think was happening?
Yeah, no.
What
So
do you
I
think
wear
was
that as a
going
badge of
on?
honor. I'm like, that's a 1-star review. I will proudly tell people about.
I don't know how you write a book like this without talking about how there were
Do
black
you
men
think we're
serving
just-
our country that were
Well,
separated.
Racism wasn't happening in
Yeah.
the 40s. JK.
Right.
JK.
Like it's crazy. And so I try to put those things in there on purpose, and I try to be sensitive about it. You know, I've never lived as a black person, obviously, much less in 1918.
Right.
You know, so I don't have Emmeline is not a black woman. You know, I don't
Yeah.
I don't go that. You know, I that's not my story to tell. But you can't tell these stories without
Right.
including that.
Right.
I
It
like
would be
how
real.
Emmeline tries to go around and like we're just gonna have the book club in their part of the
Right.
camp.
And the fact that there was a their part of
Right.
their camp.
Right.
And that's another thing in terms of research. It was hard to document. It wasn't an official rule, but they tried to keep them separate, but it kind of depended on who was in charge of the hospital and basically how racist he was.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
But, you know, they were these segregated units, and they were typically pushed into, they were grave diggers. They
Yep.
were, you know, they not that you really want to be on the front lines of battle, but they weren't given the glory
Yeah.
parts of it. They were doing these menial, depressing tasks.
yeah. And one of the characters who's in that unit, the hospital unit, is actually an officer, and he's not separated.
He's not
like
in the
with
officer
he's not-
housing.
yeah,
Yes.
I thought that was really interesting. I actually, my husband's retired military, and I pointed that
Okay.
out to him too. I was like, "Babe," and he was like, "Yeah,
Yeah.
that probably is what happened."
Yeah.
So, what's going on now? Are we writing another book? Or are we...
I'm actually, you'll be excited, writing a middle grades.
Yay! We love middle grade.
Yeah,
So,
yay!
so can you talk about
Yeah,
it? Are you on
it's,
a...
I mean, it's very unofficial so far. Like,
Okay.
who even knows if it'll become a thing?
It will be a
it's-
thing.
Well, thank you. It's about a girl in New Orleans in 1879, probably. I recently changed it, so it's currently 1879.
It could be different in a month. Well, who knows?
And she has albinism, and there was something that historians call the ugly law. It was not called that at the time, but if you were disfigured, maimed, all these horrible words, you could not beg in the streets.
Oh.
Oh my
Or
gosh.
really walk in the streets because you offended people by existing.
Of course.
And
I mean, I offend people by existing all the time.
She's
we
a
thank you
professional
for it.
offending at
Come
people.
get it.
So New Orleans was one of the few southern cities actually that had a law like this on the books. It was big in Chicago, San Francisco, but my grandparents are in Baton Rouge. My mom was born in New Orleans, so
Okay.
it's just such an odd place. Like it's
Yeah.
just so good for spooky, like so she
Oh, Nola's got that.
Yeah, it's got
it's
everything.
Just, it's got
It's
that.
definitely haunted.
yes.
For
It's
sure.
got that Creole,
yeah,
backwoods,
everything.
witch
It's got-
doctor vibe. Yeah.
So she can no longer beg, so instead she gets a job with a medium, because this is, just at the tail end of all the Victorian seance weirdness, and she plays a ghost for him, because that's what she looks like according to the times. They don't think that this is like a normal medical condition.
That is amazing.
And then there's a mystery and actual real ghosts involved. And
Is it dual timelines
no,
too?
actually, it's just
Oh wow, that's interesting. Because
my kids will be all over that.
oh my goodness, I hope so.
Your other book, your first book, Luna Park,
was also dual timeline.
was also dual timelines. And I just have to say something on a personal note. So our friend Nurse Katie read Luna Park 1st and then read this one, and she was like, she got all of the medical stuff right. Molly said, she got all of the military stuff right. I said, she got the librarian stuff right. That never happens.
You don't.
Never
You can't get all
happens.
three of us to agree on a book.
I will say I
Never.
had help.
That's okay.
That's okay.
The
That
author,
kind of research, you need help.
yeah, for the Light of Luna Park, we send it out to other authors to blurb, and one of the authors got back to us with the Light of Luna Park, said, I don't want to blurb it, but I will correct a couple of the medical inconsistencies. And I was like, I should probably be offended, but also thanks.
I appreciate it.
Right.
You're awesome.
Yeah. So I'm glad
I
that
had never
it felt
heard
very
of
realistic.
the Luna Park babies.
So bizarre.
Never. So can you tell us a little bit about Luna
Yeah,
Park? And this
so,
is your first book.
Yes, it's also dual timeline, The Light of Luna Park, and the first timeline is 1926. It's about a nurse who steals a baby from the hospital without
As
the
you do,
parents
right?
knowing. Right,
As we do.
I said I'm never going to get a job babysitting again after this story. And anti-stealing babies, for the record.
I'm on the fence.
That's a good stand.
A good right, yeah. That one I'll go with. But and she does this to take it to the Coney Island baby incubators on Luna Park. There's this basically a sideshow where this man named Dr. Cooney, but he's not actually a doctor, runs it.
Doctor.
Yeah, Dr. Cooney
Like Dr. J.
runs it, and he charges people to come in and like just stare at the babies. And they do shows. They'll slide a wedding ring over the baby's arm to show how tiny they are, how premature they are. And it's like this weird semi-exploitative space that people really criticized, but for the most part, it actually did a lot of good. And that's what modern historians and just modern humans have sort of all seemed to agree on for the most part. He saved thousands of babies' lives because hospitals were not doing it. Partially because it was hard and they didn't have the technology and it was expensive, but partially because of eugenics. And they thought these babies are weaklings, they are not worth saving, they're just going to create
Failure to
the
thrive.
fittest.
Failure to
yeah,
thrive.
they're
the
not
fittest.
the desirable, exactly, the fittest. And at Coney Island, there are fitter families contests and better baby contests. So it's all in that context.
Yeah.
So that's Althea. She steals the baby. And then in 1950 and 1951, Stella is a special education teacher, though of course it's not called special education at the time, and it hardly even exists at the time. She has a class of, you have to have a class of 10. If there aren't 10 kids in the district, then there's no special ed available. So those 9 kids are out of
we have
luck.
inclusion now.
I know. And there were not usually 10 kids in the district because the doctors would say this baby needs to be institutionalized.
Yeah.
And a lot of times they would even say it's better for you to just not even visit. It'll just confuse them.
Just
You
just
just
ignore your
relinquish your
child.
child forever.
Just give him to the government
Right.
and ignore
It'll
him
be
for the rest of
fine.
their lives.
I-
What could go wrong?
I can't imagine that because my oldest son is autistic. So for me, I'm just like.
I mean, can you imagine a medical professional telling you there's nothing you can do? You cannot teach this
I
child.
would never
you
hand a
cannot-
kid over.
My kid is
It's-
twice exceptional because he's also like gifted as
Yeah.
well. So he's socially awkward, but he's freaking
Same.
brilliant.
He's not, yeah.
Same.
He's in the 99th percentile on math.
Right, he's
he
incredible.
did not get that from me. He did not get that from me.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many kids in my classes that,
Right,
yeah.
that a few years ago would not have been in my classes.
Right,
They would have been
absolutely.
somewhere else.
Absolutely.
And they are thriving there.
Right, absolutely.
So you're writing and teaching at the same time. Are you exhausted?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I tend to, it's nice because I'm not on deadline right now. You know, there's nothing expected of me. I can write if I feel like it. If I never write a book again,
That's okay too.
not
I will
trouble.
be sad
Yeah.
if you never write a book again.
Seriously.
Okay? So you need to
We
do
would be
it.
heartbroken.
but no deadline. So that makes it easy to sort of push things back to like really just focus in on the summer and then do editing and brainstorming and researching during the year.
So
That's
did-
kind of where I'm at right now.
What do your students think about you being an author.
They actually think it's the coolest thing ever.
Yeah. I
Last
love that.
year in Nashville, my kids did not care at all. I don't think they fully understood that I didn't like. They're like, yeah, we're all authors. We all write books, which is great. Which is a great attitude. But I don't think they understood.
I'm a
The
real one.
the alpha generation is so confident and cocky.
Right.
so sweet.
It is exhausting,
It's
but they're
amazing, though.
little honey badgers, right?
Yeah, and they're gonna save the world.
They are.
They have
or
no doubt.
burn it down. I'm not sure.
Jury's
about,
still out on that one.
So how did you? Is historical fiction your favorite genre? Is that how you landed here?
Yes, it's always been my favorite to read. I've never really taken any formal. I mean, definitely in school, I didn't take any writing, anything. It was just from reading it. Like I figured out how it works.
So who's your favorite historical fiction then?
There's so many. Kate Quinn,
Kate Quinn's
obviously.
good.
Fiona Davis is great with the dual timelines. Diane Chamberlain is not like officially historical fiction, but so many of them are. I love hers. I got a blurb from her, and I was like, blurb from Lisa Wingate also. Is,
Big deal.
There are just so many. Literally any woman who writes historical fiction
Yeah.
is my favorite.
Yeah.
Like, I love them all.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I've read. Quinn had one that was a spy.
The Alice Network.
Yes.
So
I
So
really
good.
liked that one too. But this is better. This is better. Sorry. No, sorry. Because again, I was like, but I feel like this doesn't. My complaint. We read a historical fiction book for Pod called
A Discovery of Witches?
No, not that one. The book of Lost Names.
Oh, by Kristen Harmel.
Yes.
Yeah, I have issues with it.
Really?
We were both like, this doesn't add anything to the genre.
Oh, really?
But I love everything.
Yeah. See,
This adds.
I'm definitely not a critic. I'm like, it's a book. I love it.
This adds to historical fiction genre,
Right.
which is my
That-
biggest complaint. Is like,
Okay,
I'm like
that's
it's all
a
been
lot of
done.
that's the rule.
Yeah.
Does it
That's
add?
fair. No, that's fair.
Does it add? Is it helping? We just had this conversation actually about American royals.
Yeah,
Because
American Royals. Yeah.
It's very much like the selection
It's the
and
selection.
Royal Bee and all that. And while it's there, which the episode hasn't gone out yet, spoilers, it's not adding. So you belong.
Yes.
But be a part, build
Right,
up,
right.
help the genre.
Right.
Right.
I mean,
And that's usually why I don't like historical fiction. Well, my favorite book actually happens to be historical fiction. It's Kill a Mockingbird. So
Okay.
it was written in the 60s and set in the 40s. So it's historical fiction.
Right.
It's
Yeah,
not
I mean,
just
this
classic.
is the 70s. That's
Yeah. So my whole thing is if it was written and takes place in a time period in the past, it's historical fiction. Takes place in the present, it's either fantasy or sci-fi. But anyway, because that's my favorite book and it has this high place for me, I think that's why I usually struggle.
That makes sense.
But again, like I can't say this enough. I'm really not. I promise you, I'm not just like blowing smoke here.
she's
I
not.
promise you.
She does.
I don't
I'm gonna
do
take
that.
you guys with me everywhere.
I don't do that. Like I finished the book and I texted Molly and said, Molly, I'm gonna go and do a reel because I really liked this one and you wanted
I
to
called
go.
her a
I was
liar.
like,
I literally called her a liar. I
Yeah,
go,
she's
liar.
like, you're not saying you're lying. I
Liar,
was like,
lies.
oh my gosh, I'm not though. You need to get on this one. It was so good.
You guys are the best.
Yeah, well, I promise you, we don't do this with everybody. We kind of pride ourselves on giving honest critiques.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
You're gonna
appreciate
get the
that.
truth
That's something
either way.
I'm not good at.
Yeah.
So process is a big part for me as a writer.
Yeah.
So how do you go about? Do you research first? Are you a pantser? Do you
Definitely a pantser.
format? Oh.
Definitely a pantser.
Yeah.
Not
That's
really
gonna
so
backfire.
hard.
How do you pants
Two
without
timelines and two narrators.
Okay,
I
have
know where
so
it
many
starts and I know where it
questions
ends. That's about it. For the War Librarian, I did have to outline it because
Yeah.
my editors demanded it.
Well,
Not because I wanted to.
I mean, well,
They
but the amount.
demanded you outline it?
So
How
cruel,
dare they?
right?
Excuse
Rude.
me.
Rude.
No, this isn't your process. Secondly, go away. But with this, you would have to. It's
Yeah.
just the research
No,
demands
there's-
it.
Yeah. And so in terms of the research, I'll do like one big deep dive at the beginning until I find like the question that can be at the core of the book that drives the plot.
So-
So the censorship versus the providing the books. For Luna Park, this man saving thousands of lives, but also he was a liar. He was not a real doctor. And once I had that, I could start writing, and the rest of the research I would do throughout.
So what sparked these ladies? Who are they for you?
Um,
Where did they come from?
Kathleen is a lot like my little sister. She's graduating from Auburn next week
for
with
her.
a degree in professional flight, like as a pilot.
Wow.
Yes, which much like the military, which she doesn't want to do. She's not doing Air Force or anything. But it's very male dominated.
Yeah.
and her class is 1/3 female, which is still very skewed, but you know, it's not as bad as you might expect. But the instructors and the administration, and I mean, she's 5'2", so for a woman, a little bit short, but not like tiny.
Yeah.
She can't
Compared
fit the
to
plane.
me, she's tiny.
She has to put a bunch of pillows behind her to reach the pedals because they're built for the average male, not
Right.
for the
Yeah.
average female. So even those like tiny things that you never think about, she got pulled aside and got told to wear less revealing clothing at the airport because it was distracting to the men who are flying our airplanes. If they get that easily distracted, I don't want them flying me anywhere.
What goes on in your head and your pants should not be influenced by the fact that I have to wear clothes that fits my boobs in them.
And she was, I mean, not that it would matter. She could show up in just skin tight dress, cocktail dress, and
wouldn't
that'd be
matter.
fine. But she wasn't even. Like, she was wearing her normal clothes. She was like, I was wearing shorts and a t-shirt.
Yeah. No, my
Yeah,
children...
you must be covered. We
Right.
must not reveal even the ankle.
So anyway, Kathleen and Ryan, you know, have some things in common. Except Kathleen is much more like reclusive, not reclusive, but you know, she's like, I can depend on myself. And Ryan is very much like, if you're her friend, she will die, kill for you, die for you, kill for you both. So she's kind of a antisocial version of Ryan, though she grows to be more social. Emmeline's probably me. You know, she likes books. She doesn't like
So
talking
this
to
was for
people
you
that
and your
much.
sister.
Yeah, in a way, and it's dedicated to her.
That's
to
beautiful.
Ryan at the front. It's a little thing about that.
So, when are you going to write the book about the pilot?
I honestly,
The female pilot.
I truly am tempted.
You've got to.
I was
You
reading
gotta.
the other day about I think it was the first woman in Australia to get her pilot's license. And she did like medical care in like the outback. She would fly people back and forth. I thought that was so cool in like the 40s.
Yeah.
You
So,
should see some... Have you done much research on Amelia Earhart and her process?
No.
The work that woman put in to just get close to an airplane, to even be allowed to look at them
Really?
on the airfield. It's
haven't
it's
at all.
amazing.
Our boobs mess things up. It's, you know.
How dare we be born with different genetics,
Yeah.
right?
I liked that in the Naval Academy light. You know, the
Yeah.
fact that they didn't know how to make a uniform.
Right.
Yeah.
For
They
women,
made
didn't
them walk in
fit.
heels.
They made them walk in heels. The skirts didn't fit, or the shirts didn't fit over their hips, and then the purses for the tampons or for the pads or whatever. And then they couldn't wear the purses anymore because the
they
men
got
got
an
mad
advantage.
that it was an advantage. They could carry study materials with them.
They had to like literally lob
But
off
the men had
heels
pockets.
because they were getting
Yes.
shin splints from running
Ridiculous.
in heels.
Yeah, ridiculous.
Ridiculous. So there's I think it's YA, but it might be middle grade book called Fly Girls.
Yes.
I've heard of it. I haven't read it, but
So
I've heard of it.
that's a good one because they
Okay.
do. So it's actually about an African American who's doing passing, is what they call it in there. She's very fair skinned, and so she's pretending to be white so
Right.
that she can fly. But it's a lot of the early women who were flying and test pilots. You get a lot of their stories in there.
Wow.
So
Yeah, I'll have to read
that's
that.
that's a good one.
That's good to know.
So maybe I like historical fiction. I don't know.
Yeah, you sound
She
a little
does.
suspicious here.
She just
Your
likes to be
favorite book's
hypercritical.
historical fiction. Well, it's your favorite, so you have a higher standard. It makes sense.
Yeah.
It
I
has
might
to
be. might be a little sus. So
A little.
A little.
Just a little sus.
So when is your panel today?
I already had it. It was
Your-
at 10.
Oh, her panel was at 10. Okay, so if you missed it, sorry.
But there are books to buy.
There are books to buy. There is a book sale going on. We're at the Annapolis Book Festival at the Key School. There are books here. There is a great book sale, and it benefits the school. So help out.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Just go see them.
If you buy one of the books from one of the authors that we're interviewing, like The War Librarian, there may be a sticker in there that says Book Besties on it. So yay for that. Anything else we need to know?
Gosh, I don't know. Y'all are so fun. I just.
Oh, thanks. Well, you are welcome to come back anytime.
I would love to.
We
Yes.
film distantly, so
Okay.
you can be in New
Good to
York
know.
and hop on with
All
us.
right,
so.
maybe that middle grades one if it ever.
Yeah.
That'd be
off
great.
the ground.
That'd be great.
So-
I mean, she has a middle schooler. My son's
Yep,
going to
she
middle
was
school
telling me,
next year.
Oof, good luck.
I run the Battle of the Books program for our community library where I work, and so
Awesome.
we
That'll
need
be
middle
a lot
grade
of fun.
books. So
Yay.
yeah.
Okay.
Thank you,
Awesome.
Addison.
Thank
so
y'all.
much.
Thank you for
This has
watching.
been delightful.
This was
I
so
love your
fun.
energy.
Yeah.
yeah.
Says you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
We'll-
y'all.
All right, besties. We'll see you next.
Okay, he's
We're
just weird.
back,
Hi.
besties. How is everybody?
We are back. We are at the Annapolis Book Festival at the Key School, and now we are with Cece Harrington, Christina. Cece Harrington is her pen name. I don't know what you want people to call you, but we'll call you both.
Yeah, no,
Author.
Christina's good. Christina's good.
Christina's
Christina's
Yeah,
good.
yeah,
And
yeah.
she's British, so just soak in that.
I know,
that,
just that-
that lovely accent. Just soak it in. So we are going to talk to Christina today about her book Wild Oak, and just a little. Thank you so much for being here.
yes.
Oh, are you
Thank
kidding me? This is so exciting for me. I've never been on a podcast, and I've never been on anything live. I'm still trying to figure out where I'm looking, but that's okay.
That's
It's
okay.
all good.
We
It's
don't know
okay.
either.
We don't
Yeah.
either.
We when we started this podcast, Molly had a dream that we started a podcast, and I was like, "Oh, that sounds fun. How do we do that?" Neither of us knew.
No.
We started, and we still had no idea.
And I don't
So-
think we know what we're doing
So
now.
we've
We're
been
just
doing it
faking
for 2
it.
years, and we're
I
like,
just know that we're not disrobing. Right?
No, we're
That's
no
the one thing
close
we're
thing on.
not disrobing right now.
it's not
Yeah.
that kind of show.
No.
It's not that kind of show.
Okay.
We are at a school. Remember that.
Just to be clear, we won't do that when we're not
Ever.
at a school either.
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm never doing
Mom.
that in
You
public.
got
Yeah.
the lipstick going on. So, all right. So let me give you a little bit of
Go on.
information about Christina. I'm a slow reader. I like that because I like to absorb, and I have to read fast because of the podcast, but I love soaking in the words. So,
I am a slow reader. I'm not just saying that. I genuinely am
Yeah.
a slow reader. It takes me a long time to read a book, but I kind of love that.
yeah.
I really, I don't want to race through it, and I know I kind of when I am racing through something, that gives me a sign that I'm not. It's not really
Yeah.
speaking
It's not
to
in
me.
there.
I'm just feeling
Yeah.
like, oh, I've just got to get to the
Yeah,
end.
I gotta
Yeah.
finish it. I do that too because we read a book a week for the pod,
Mhm.
and sometimes I'm reading a book and I'm like, okay, I don't care. Can I just skip whole chapters at this point? Like this one's
You're
just not it for
skimming
me.
chapters. You're just speed
Yeah.
reading, and you're like,
Yeah.
yep.
I
yep,
put
yep,
the
yep.
audiobook at 2 speed.
I can't do that.
It's like talking to me.
Oh,
It's
last
like having
chapter.
ants in the brain if you go faster
Yeah.
than 1.5.
Yeah. No, I know what you mean. I know what you mean.
So this is your first book,
It is. Yeah.
and this is your first book, and it is not only receiving like a wild positive reception from fans. You just won the ALA Schneider Award,
No big deal.
which is like as a librarian, I'm going. She won the Schneider
Schneider
Award.
Award.
Like I feel like I'm not even cool enough to be in your presence right now.
Are
Like,
you kidding me? I can't believe it won the Schneider Award. I'm
It's
sort of
brilliant.
amazed. It's such an honor. It's a huge deal to me.
Yeah.
It should
Particularly
be.
this award of,
Yeah.
it's just for the book to be recognized in that way. It's just amazing. It's amazing to me.
and there are
really.
lots of book awards, and I'm not downplaying any of them,
Mm-hmm.
but the librarians chose you.
Yes.
Like that's a big deal.
They're book people.
Like our job is to say, this is a book that you need to read. And I'm putting myself in there. We picked it.
I mean,
so-
you are in
No.
the ALA.
Yeah, but I'm not on the Schneider committee. I'm not cool like that.
No, April, it's amazing. It really is. I think the amazing thing about the awards in general is that it helps get the book into more kids' hands,
Oh,
and
yeah.
that, at the end of the day, that's the most important thing. But just as a writer, it's just incredible. It really is. It's such an honor. I cried. Can we
Oh,
move
yeah.
on? Because I'm going to start crying again.
Yeah,
Yes,
No, yes,
absolutely.
yes,
Can you give us
absolutely.
a synopsis of your book? Can you tell us what your book is about?
Yeah, sure. So it's set in 1963 in the UK when it was actually legal to walk into a department store and buy a leopard cub,
Bananas.
which kind of blows.
I
my
am
mind.
so jealous.
Yeah.
Because
No.
everybody here knows very well that Molly would buy a tiger.
No, she wouldn't.
Yes,
No,
she would.
No, she'd think about it, but she wouldn't actually do.
No, I would not let her.
No. So
Tiger would be in my house.
Yeah, so it's set in. So the story is about one such cub who gets bought from Harrods in London, posh department store, and
Very
pretty
posh.
quickly abandoned
Yeah.
because it's never a good idea to buy a wild animal
Because we don't
and
need
keep
wild
them
animals
Right.
pets.
as a pet in an apartment.
In an apartment.
A London flat, yeah.
Yeah.
A flat, an
Yeah,
apartment.
Why?
it's not even that big of one. It's
No.
like
No. So
in London, guys.
In London.
Yeah.
In London.
yeah, exactly. So,
In 1963.
1963.
That does not belong there.
No. So, and the woman who buys him is completely clueless, and in fact inspired by. I was showing a video clip this morning from the British film archives of this woman who is walking a leopard through the streets of London. She's wearing a fur coat.
Weird.
It's got one of those very sort of old-fashioned accents where it's like, oh, and she's walking her leopard through the streets.
And it got like Kincaid and
exactly.
Yeah.
So sorry, back to the story. The story is about one such cub. His name is Rumpus. He gets bought and pretty quickly abandoned, and a young girl whose name is Maggie. She's 12, and Maggie has a very strong stutter. This makes it really hard for her to talk to humans, but she has no trouble talking to animals. And the two of them meet in Wild Oak Forest, which in the book is one of the last remaining pieces of ancient woodland in the UK, and it's under threat. So it's a book about these three threats: a snow leopard, a child, a forest, humans, animals, and our environment. But it's really a book. It's a book about the nature of communication and understanding. It's a book about the power of empathy.
Yeah, 100%. There is a line from your book, and we met last night at the author event, and I told you that I've been saying it to my son who's on the autism spectrum, and that's be kind to yourself. Being human is hard. And you told me where that came from. So I was wondering if you could tell our listeners.
I mean, that's the heart of that line. I think the artist actually wrote it. She incorporated it into the cover.
The cover is gorgeous.
Yeah, be gentle with yourself.
Be gentle with yourself. Sorry, I said be kind, but it's be gentle.
No,
and on the back it says everything speaks, just not the same language on the tree, which is just beautiful.
Yeah, which is sort of
the artwork
art
is gorgeous.
Yes, Diana Sudyaka is amazing.
Yeah.
She's the artist. It's so beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
So that line. Sorry to go back to your question. I have a very special friend out in Colorado, and she was walking through the woods, and she would tell you, in the conversation that we had, she would tell you that she felt that. She felt the trees. I mean, it just sounds... when I put words to it, it just sounds so sort of woo-woo.
No, I get it.
No.
I get it.
She felt that the trees were talking to her and trying to reassure her.
Oh, I get that.
I feel like
not with words.
I feel that all the...
Yeah.
I live in Calvert County. We moved there from Texas, and I grew up in the woods. Like, I grew up in the woods of upstate New York.
Yeah.
So the forest is my happy place. The woods are my happy place. And when we bought this house and I go outside, it's like I'm taking this big, deep breath.
Yeah.
And the forest is breathing with me.
Yeah.
It's like... You're here.
Yeah,
it's okay.
It's okay. Yeah.
And it's magic.
Yeah.
And the forest does that, and you have that magic in here.
Yeah.
Oh wow.
You have that magic in
for
here.
sure.
Thank you.
So one of the reasons that I wanted to pick you as an author for us to interview, we were sent the list of the authors, and you're a children's author.
Yeah.
So for me, as a children's librarian, I was like, can we please put her on the list, because like this is the only one that's like I really want to talk to from the children's author perspective. And people. So this is my thing with children's authors. People have this misconception that it's not the same level of difficulty to write.
Right.
Yes, they do have that.
And that's just so far from the truth.
Facts.
Yeah.
So I wondered, like, what was that like for you when you're like, I'm going to write a children's book? Like, what sort of feedback did you get initially?
Sure. Well, I think there's maybe two things to respond to there. One is that when I started to write, and I've been writing for some time now, I didn't sit down with the intention to write for children or young readers. For me, the writing process, it really does come from inside. It comes from when I began. I think it comes from my 11-year-old self. I really do. I was doing an evening class. My daughter was teeny tiny, and I was doing an evening class at Brown University. I needed to get out of the house, and my husband was like, go do something. you
Brown
know,
University,
like, with,
no big deal.
with the brain. No, it's the community college. Like anyone can do it.
Yeah.
Oh no.
Yeah.
Oh no.
No, truly. No, anyway, it's community, like the evening classes.
Okay,
Like,
but she says that, but she studied English lit at
Oxford.
Oxford. So yeah, no big deal.
No big deal.
okay, no, the community college classes, which were amazing, and truly.
We're not picking. We think it's amazing. You're brilliant.
No,
Truly.
anyone could do these classes, and I totally recommend them. And I sat down and I did the first homework assignment because I'm so sort of nerdy and diligent. And that was just sort of what came out.
Yeah.
It was the protagonist was an 11-year-old girl.
Yeah.
And I can't turn it on like a tap.
Yeah.
So if so, it's just
have
what came.
The moment has to
from
inspire. I'm the same way.
heart. Yeah.
If I'm not inspired to write, I'm not writing.
Yeah.
The words have to be there. I had a teacher once tell me, my degree's in English and creative writing, and he said, we write the stories we told ourselves to go to sleep as children.
Yeah.
I like that a lot.
And he's not wrong. We're writing for ourselves first. As an author, that's the first, we are our first negative critic. Every word we put on page, we are hypercritical of. I'm sure you were a negative Nancy the whole way. I'm sure you're like, oh, this is garbage. I don't like this.
Picture that from her.
And
This is like
in,
positivity
I'm sure
in
you
here.
struggled.
No, absolutely no.
It's-
Oh my
every
gosh.
author struggles.
Yeah,
We have,
huge self-doubt.
Yes.
Oh my gosh, you kidding me?
yeah.
I've got self-doubt right now, sitting here thinking,
Imposter
what am I even
syndrome.
doing
Imposter
here?
syndrome
Sitting-
is
why do
really
you guys
real.
want to talk? Yeah. No, it is.
And it's brilliant that we get these still, even though we're full of these doubts, we still get to
Yeah.
put magic in the world. And
Yeah.
that's beautiful, I think.
I don't know what that is.
That might be my thing.
Oh.
I forgot to turn it.
That's
You could just go ahead and turn
Um,
it. Okay. Yeah, I'm so sorry.
That's okay.
You're
It's not
okay.
like it's-
This is
Yeah.
not the first time this has happened.
No.
Yes, we've done it ourselves.
So are you working on anything else right now?
Well, so hang on. Let me circle back. In terms of people thinking that it's easier to write for children, yeah, I just don't agree with that.
no.
And I think that children deserve our very best work. I am passionate about what stories.
We
I
have
make.
this argument.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, so we
Yeah.
have a friend of the pod, Francesca Zappia. She writes YA, and Eliza and Her Monsters is a spectacular book. My daughters are obsessed with it. I'm sure your daughter will love it. There's this line we quote all the time. There's a monster inside my head, and it controls my doubt.
There's a monster in my brain that controls my doubt.
Okay. Yeah.
And that's from Chessie, one of Chessie's books. But Chessie writes up. She doesn't. She expects her children to learn and grow with her. So she will put big words in there. She will put more complex feelings in there. And April says this all the time.
Yeah.
We should expect more from our children's authors.
Yeah. And one of the things that I really liked about this, so I didn't know when we selected your book, when we selected you to interview, which again, thank you. I didn't know really what your book was about. I just knew it's a children's author. I want to interview a children's author. So when I started reading your book, and I told you this last night, and I got a little emotional last night. I don't know if you noticed, but I'm going to try not to get emotional now. So I was in speech therapy when I was in elementary school because I stuttered. And occasionally still, when I don't take the time to slow down, my tongue still catches and I will fumble over words and I will have difficulty and it'll tick, like just like in your book. And I have to stop and like sometimes I'll clap, sometimes I'll be like, that's not the words. Like I have to talk myself through it. So I'm instantly relating with this character. And that is what I want from a children's book. I want a book where a kid's like, I've never read a book that I'm in.
Yeah.
I've never read a book that like, this is okay. This is okay that I stutter. Like, it's okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
And just like normalizing that diversity and neurodiversity and all these different things. Like, I'm a mom of an autistic kid. Like, I need to see that. And so for me, I went in like, I want to talk to the children's author, and I came out like, we want to read this for Battle of the Books with our system.
Yeah.
So it's just amazing.
Yeah.
And I'm so thankful. And I want to talk about your audiobook real quick, if that's okay. Because that's how I read your book.
Well, and hang on, can I just say,
Yeah.
I mean, thank you so much for saying that. I think it's also really important though that this book, for the child who doesn't have a stutter.
Yes.
And who
Yes.
has never met a child who stutters, or perhaps they have met a child who stutters and they don't know it.
Yes.
Because that
Acceptance
child is
is
struggling
It's
and
such a
is
great message.
doing everything they can not to show it.
Yeah.
And so it's really important from both
Right.
perspectives, because my hope is that, you know, yes, there's lots of information in the back, but my hope is that for a young person reading this book who doesn't stutter or hasn't met a child who stutters, that they come away with a sense of compassion and understanding.
Yes.
And so when they do meet a person that stutters, because they will,
Yeah.
then they understand.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. You're completely right. When I became a librarian, it's still a work in progress, I think, but children's literature has become more diverse. But there was a real need for diversity. And one of the
Yeah,
things that
absolutely.
we were learning about in library school, and, you know, other librarians were talking about, was mirrors. Like, kids need mirrors of themselves. And, like, my thing now is, they don't just need mirrors. They need to see people who are different than them in whatever capacity that is. If it's color, if it's ability, whatever. But they need to see it normalized. Orientation, gender, whatever. Like, it needs to be, these are just people.
Yeah.
Like, I am more than just, like, Maggie is more than just her stutter.
Yep.
She is a person with compassion. She uses books to help Rumpus and I was just like, oh, she used books. Like, she's a person that is misunderstood because people only want to see that part of her, and that she's trying really hard to hide. But when she gets to be herself,
Yeah.
when she gets to be herself, and when she's with her animals, she is a person that is so admirable.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's something I think as a writer that's really important. You know, whatever character you're creating, this is a human being on the page.
Yeah.
It's a fictional person, but this is a human being, and
We talk about characters that are like they're real people
They're
all the
human.
time.
Yeah.
They're human to us.
absolutely. So, you know, it was really important, and I felt that it was one of the few things that I knew right from the beginning, that Maggie's stutter is part of who she is. It's a big part of who she is, and forms so much of who she is, but it doesn't define her.
It's not
Yeah.
all she
And
is.
It's not all she is, and it doesn't hold her back.
That's
I
actually.
knew that. I knew that that's how it would begin, but I also knew how it would end.
Yeah, and that's one of the things we talked to our son about. My husband's behind the camera now. When he was officially diagnosed with autism at 7, we sat down with him to talk to him. We've only started calling it autism within the past year, because at the time he just thought, well, I'm different, like I don't understand, and it was hard to explain it, but now he's asking more questions, so now he knows the word autism. But I was like, it doesn't define who you are. You are my son. You are so much more than this. He's just this big ball of he's light.
He's so
And
amazing.
He's amazing. He's magic. I like to say he's magic. He's also gifted. So he's he's Sheldon Cooper, but
Sheldon Cooper.
he really is. He's just amazing. He's all math and sciencey, and he doesn't have great social skills, but
human beings are complicated.
They're complicated.
And you know, as a character in a book, I think when you really get drawn into a book, it's when you really care for the character.
Yes.
And so the character has to be complex and rounded
Yeah.
and exist on the page in all of those different ways.
Absolutely.
Maggie loves animals, and she loves to read, and she's thoughtful, and she's a city kid, and you know, she gets to the forest, and she's never been in a forest like that. And so there's all sorts of things that go into, you know, creating a character and how.
And the forest in your book becomes a character as well.
Yeah.
It has a life. It has a presence. It's not a setting.
That's
it is
beautiful.
a character.
I love that you said that. Thank you. That means so much to me.
We love.
Thank you.
I'm
for
all
saying
about
that.
it. We love that. We love.
We love a setting that becomes
Yeah, I
Discovery
yes.
of Witches,
Yeah.
the Bishop House.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So.
And my grandfather was also named Fred, so
Oh, no
Fred being
way.
I was like,
Oh.
her grandpa Fred.
So somebody asked me the other day, would you ever like the book to be made into a movie?
Oh yeah.
And if you would, this was a young reader who asked this, who would you like? You know, what movie stars would you
Yeah.
like? And I thought, oh, brilliant question.
Yeah.
And then I thought, perhaps you know, I shouldn't make it look as if I've thought about this, but I have thought about
Of course.
this.
Yes, you
Because
have.
The person that I would
Absolutely.
love to play Fred would be Bill Nighy. You know him?
Yes!
Bill Nighy.
Oh my gosh.
I just love him so much. Have you ever seen the Best Exotic Marigold Hotel?
Yes.
Him in that.
Yes.
I
Yes.
just love Bill
Yes.
Nighy.
Yes.
Now that's
So
what's
we'll
in my
put
head.
it out into the universe.
Because it was my grandpa the
The
whole time
Juju.
I was reading it. I was picturing my Fred, but yes, that's who it is.
So other than doing press for this, what do you have going on? Are you working on anything else?
I am. It's been busy. Things have been. The response to the book has been amazing.
It's
truly.
a brilliant book. You're a brilliant
Well,
author.
I mean, there's a huge amount of luck that goes into it. But
Absolutely.
it's definitely
Absolutely.
been busier than I expected. So it's a little bit slow going on the new one right now.
I mean,
but
that's
okay.
writing in general.
That's okay. Yes. I do have this guy's this. Can I just share this guy?
Yes,
please.
So
absolutely.
he's sort of my lucky. He's like one of my my lucky charms. The World Wildlife Fund has this program where you can adopt a snow leopard.
Yes.
So look it up.
We'll
if
put
you've
it in
got
our
a young,
links.
Yeah.
If you've got a young reader that enjoys the book, that's something that you
can
do.
tag along with it, yes.
which really helps.
Yeah. That's
So-
awesome.
We love
That's
it.
great.
It's such a wild story that you could buy exotic animals from.
Well, I said
And it's true.
I
That's
know.
true, right? You
Yes,
know that.
and I
Yeah.
loved your author's note at the end. Loved your author's note where you talked about your inspiration for this book, and I just thought that really added as well. Like,
Yeah.
I love author's notes, by the way. That's like one of my jams is like reading
Yeah.
author's notes.
I mean, I was worried that it would, sort of going on and on, so people really want to know. But actually, I think in this instance, it is helpful. It's in all cases, in all three threads, because I wanted to share where this kernel of inspiration for Rumpus came from. And are we okay for time? If we,
You're fine. You're good.
Okay.
You keep
So
going.
Christian the Lion, have you heard of Christian the Lion?
Yes, I was actually going
Yeah.
to mention that.
Yeah.
Yes. If you haven't seen this, gang, it's on YouTube. I'll put it in the links.
Yeah,
But this
put it in the
man adopts a lion cub and then takes it back to Africa later, and as a cub to, set it back. The lion remembers him years later.
Well, he bought these two.
Yeah.
The two men buy the lion cub from Harrods, from the pet
Yes.
kingdom.
And then they take...
But that's part of what my inspiration, where it came from, was because I was reading about Christian the Lion, and they take him home. They feel sorry for this cub, so they take him home. And then there are these photographs. I'm forgetting the name of the photographer now.
And
But the pictures are amazing
Yeah.
of this cub in their apartment, and you
it's
see
like this
some goodness.
elaborate, big, gorgeous apartment too, right?
But it's very clear
Yeah.
that you cannot keep
Yeah.
this lion, and how
Right.
appropriate that is. But for Christian, his story ends incredibly. They work with George Adamson, the conservationist, who I think comes into their shop. They're selling secondhand furniture, and George Adamson just walks into their shop, and so they're able to work with him to get the lion cub released into the wild in Kenya. And I was thinking, well, how many lion cubs did that happen to you?
yeah.
Not many, I'm sure.
So that's what started my imagination. Well, what might have happened?
Where are they,
And
right?
What might have
Because
happened to
Harrods
a leopard
did
cub?
sell a lot of wild exotic animals.
Yeah.
Elephants.
Yeah.
The queen bought an elephant for one of the princes, and it's in the zoo today.
Is it?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. I read it. I'll put it in the notes if I can find it, when I find it. But she had bought him an elephant as a birthday present, and they put it in the London Zoo.
Oh, was that? I thought that was to an American president. I might have got that wrong.
I thought it was the queen
But
with
there were-
one of the
I do not know.
princes.
There were armadillos.
Yes.
There were alligators.
And they had bought like a bunch
there
of
were-
animals
I know.
at the...
There to be fair and honest, there probably weren't snow leopards, but there were leopards and cheetahs.
Yeah.
So I did ring Harrods.
I think there were snow leopards. I'm here.
Yeah,
for
let's
it.
stay.
We're
We'll
here
go
for it.
with
We're
that.
going to keep this part of fiction.
And I have to say, oh, sorry. This is what's happening.
Yeah.
I loved being in the forest with them.
Yeah.
And was this a familiar backdrop for your childhood?
Absolutely, yeah. So, well, I'll get to that, but I just want to say I rang Harrods because I tried to find out, did they have any records of
Oh,
like the
yeah.
receipts
Oh, yeah.
or the or like, what happened? You bought a
Yeah,
leopard
like
and
did
then
you guys
went
buy them
home?
in bulk?
Was there an instruction leaflet? Like what?
Did it
so
come?
I was really hoping I could find something in their archives department, but they didn't have anything.
They
Yeah, I'm
don't
sure.
want. They don't want.
They don't
put
want
that
people
out there.
knowing.
Yeah, no. But the forest, yeah. So I grew up in the English countryside in a village. I was outside a lot. My brothers were much bigger than me. I was barefoot a lot of the time outside.
Love that. I love that
I
she
love
was
to
barefoot.
Just
climb
not in the
trees.
English countryside.
I can even feel it now. Like if I shut my eyes, I can feel what a tree trunk, the bark, feels like against my bare feet. It's a particular kind of feeling.
Yeah.
You know. So yeah, it was, and then the inspiration for Wild Oak Forest is there is a place in Cornwall called the Roundwood, and it's owned by the National Trust, so it's free. It's open to the public. It's a small kind of forest, a woodland, and it's just such a beautiful, special place. And so that was kind of the inspiration in my mind, but I just had to imagine it. I tend to be able to visit in the summertime, so I was having to imagine it in the snow in 1963. It does not normally snow in Cornwall, but it did in 1963.
Wow.
The big freeze was a thing. The Thames froze over.
Yes.
That was all. And then the other people often ask, why was it set in 1963? And part of that is because all of the cat stuff was true, and that was happening at the time. But also Rachel Carson had just published Silent Spring in America, and this big freeze was happening in Cornwall. So this was, it was the beginnings sort of the environmental movement.
Yeah.
And I just felt like it, I needed that place to be real and rooted in a real time and space.
And because you've basically made it a character, I feel like I've been there.
Yeah.
I've never been there, but I feel like I've been there.
Oh,
It's really.
Oh, you're gonna make me cry now. That's just lovely
Don't
to hear.
cry.
Yeah, no, that's great. That's great.
Um,
But that's my hope, and that's what we do, isn't it? We travel through books.
yeah,
Yeah.
I call myself a fantastical traveller because that's what books will do. That they will take you to
Yeah.
other places.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, I've never been to space, but I've read a lot of books that take place in space.
Yeah.
I get a bit spooked by the
And-
idea of going to space.
Andy Weir knows what he's doing.
Oh yeah, if you want to dive into sci-fi, that's
The guy.
probably our
Right.
favorite, Andy
Right.
Weir. So I'm sorry, can I go back and we
Yeah.
talk about the audiobook again?
Yeah, sorry, that's right. I didn't mean to cut you off. Yes,
No.
yes.
So
audiobook.
the audiobook,
Yeah.
it's fantastic, especially
Yeah.
if you're audiobook fans. Like Molly and I read a lot on audiobooks. This is something that she talks about on the pod a lot. She's dyslexic,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
so that's the way that she accesses books a lot of the time. I just love to be my commute's long,
Yeah.
so I love an audiobook on my commute.
Yeah.
One of the things I really liked about your book is Rumpus's part is third person,
Yes.
Maggie's part is first person.
That's right.
And the narrator nails both of them, and it won an Audible award.
It did.
So-
I just want to cheers to Camelia O'Grady. She's the narrator. The
Did you get to
actress
pick your
who-
narrator?
So I kind of did. Yeah,
awesome.
which is amazing.
It's nice to have that control,
y-
especially when it's your words going out into the world.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, I worked the director of audio at Scholastic is an amazing man, and so he sent me 2 or 3 auditions, and the one thing that I had said, and I'm not that kind of diva person that's like it has to be no, and I'd like some ice water with grapes in it. No.
Only blue M&Ms
Yeah,
in the room.
yeah, no.
We didn't get our blue M&Ms, just so everybody knows.
No, but the one thing I said was, if it gets released on audiobook, it needs to be a narrator who is British.
Facts.
And who is a person that stutters now or who had stuttered as a child. The audio piece of
They
that
have to
was
know.
really important. I did not want it to be somebody doing a British accent or somebody...
Faking a stutter.
Yeah.
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 No, I love that you did that too, because that's authentic.
We
right?
don't want Dick
Yes.
Van Dyking.
It's-
Anybody
And-
Dick Van Dyke reading it,
Camelia did an amazing job. She really did, because it's hard. Also, there are some of Maggie's passages. It's hard, and so I was so excited when it won that award.
Yeah.
She really deserves it, and all the production team, everybody at Scholastic and Annapolis, it was just
It
really
was very good.
terrific.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so local libraries. We love local libraries on Book Besties.
Yes, we do.
I borrowed it from Hoopla. So it's probably on your Hoopla since that's how they curate their collection. So, check it out there, but also buy the book because
It's beautiful.
support our author friends. Sorry. Current writing project. Did we talk about your
Yep.
writing project?
Yep.
They're all running together now. And I'm
Yeah.
getting
No, you're good. You're
You're
good.
good. We talked about that.
What is one thing you hope readers of Wild Oak will take away from your book?
Oh, it's such an interesting question. It's such a good question and a difficult question because I feel that every time a person picks up a book, they are bringing their own unique, individual lived life and experience to that book. So I find this question hard to answer because I hope whatever it is that you are needing as a reader, maybe you're a child, maybe you're a child that's never left a city, maybe you're a child that lives in the countryside, or you're a child who stutters, or depending on who you are, I hope that you get whatever you need from this book. I will say that I hope that for whoever you are, adult, young, wherever you're coming from into this story, that you leave with a sense of belonging. That you feel,
That's
whoever you
beautiful.
are showing up in this world, that you belong, and that there is a place for you exactly as you are. You are part of this world, and there is a place for you.
She gave me that lesson today.
I did.
She gave me that lesson today.
I did.
I mean, I as an adult still need it.
I think we'll do.
So, snow leopard, favorite animal?
Oh, good question.
It's obviously
It's really hard because I grew up with cats. I had two cats. I didn't know this. I only thought about this the other day. I grew up with two cats that kind of looked like this guy, farm cats, that were grey, and they were called Bonnie and Clyde.
Nice.
And
Good
I
names.
absolutely loved them. Bonnie knew, like, she would crawl up the side of the house to where my window was, and they kind of looked like Rumpus and Rosie. So as a child, I would have said cats, but now my hubby's allergic to cats, and we've got this lab, and I love her to bits. And we've also just got a new puppy who's an absolute scamp.
Yeah,
super
having a second
mischievous.
dog is amazing. Second
Is
dogs are a
it?
good idea.
Is it? Are they?
Yes.
I have two.
Please
It's
be on my
turned-
side
it's
for this
turned-
one. I'm trying to convince him we need another dog.
Right. Yes.
We have a very
It's
large
no
Saint Bernard.
Extra work at all. It doesn't turn your life upside down. He's such a scamp. He's a tiny little border terrier, and he's so mischievous.
Oh, yeah.
He's so jaunty. He's got so much sort of swag about
Yeah.
him.
They're confident, those little ones. They
and
always
he's so
are.
cheerful, and he brings such sort of swagger into the room. But yes, I'm going to say that a snow leopard is my favourite animal because they're spectacular.
My favorite animal now is a hippo, but when I was in elementary school, I had to do a research project on an animal that was at our Columbus Zoo, because we were going to the Columbus Zoo, and I picked snow leopard.
Did
So
you?
I'm pretty sure,
No.
Christina, you and I were just supposed to meet at some point in our lives.
Oh my goodness, that's so amazing.
I know, yeah.
They really are spectacular
They are awesome.
creatures.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they're so like nimble. Is that the word I'm looking for? Like they're just
Yeah.
able to. They pounce like cats, but they also
Yeah.
they track through snow. Like that's
And
not,
their tails are amazing in terms of their balance. It
Yeah.
really helps them. But I don't know if we talked about this, but when I was researching the book, I went to interview a zoologist at a conservation-based zoo in Colorado where they had a snow leopard, and his name was Bhutan, and it was amazing. I got to sort of be up close with him, and fun fact is that she showed me when it was time when he was hungry. She showed me how to feed him with chopsticks and raw meatballs.
Yeah.
And that is why Rumpus, for real, in the book,
Eats
loves meatballs.
meatballs.
Because that's all
Yeah.
that's all true. But she read early drafts of the book and was going through sort of the Rumpus sections and really looking at his behaviours and what was
Helping you
know-
with mannerisms and stuff. That's awesome.
yeah, exactly. So the more I learned about them, I mean, they just are really beautiful and amazing creatures.
Yeah. And that's actually one of the reasons why I really liked that his part was third person.
Yeah.
Because I think your book gets comparisons to the one and only Ivan, which is an
yeah.
animal in captivity, and it's first person, also middle grade. But that book being all in first person, I felt like that was harder for me to be I found it less
Interesting.
accessible,
Yeah,
even though you're in
interesting.
his head.
Yeah.
To me, being the person on the outside who's reading Rumpus's story that way, it was more like I was involved in the story, but I was removed enough that it felt like it's an animal.
Yeah. So it's interesting. I mean, that's a conscious decision on my part. I thought really hard about that. I mean, one of my favourite books growing up was Watership Down.
It's a great book.
So the rabbits are anthropomorphized. They might as well be humans. I mean, I can still hear Hazel's voice, and I didn't want to do that with this because this book is about understanding and communication. It's everything speaks, just not the same language. It would have for this book. I don't think that would have been the right thing for me to do. It would have missed the point.
I 100%
of
agree.
what the story is trying to
I
do.
100% agree. And when I was talking to my partner in the Battle of the Books selection, and she was like, "Oh, so it's like One and Only Ivan." I was like, "It's not though."
No.
But
It's
it takes
not,
skill to jump from third person to first person and back to third person, because confusing those voices and getting that writing right it's hard. Good ups on you.
So your next book, is it also 2 narrators? Is it also historical fiction?
No, it's not. And it's too early. It's too early stage for me to talk about it.
We'll talk about it off camera, and you guys don't get to know. But we're friends now.
We are friends now. But yeah, it's funny. I was saying earlier today, I don't write with that intention of this book is going to be X, Y, Z. And so it just sort of comes from a different place. I sometimes feel I really loved Liz Gilbert's book Big Magic. For any writers and creators out there that are having wobbly moments or struggle with self-doubt, Big Magic is a fantastic book.
Is it?
And she talks about this idea of the story is looking for a teller, and that's how I feel. If you're open. I'm serving the story. It's not what I'm setting out to do.
I'm the vessel for that idea.
Yeah, I'm not setting out, just for me at least. Can I speak for myself? I'm not setting out to write a story with 2 narrators or with that's particularly for this kind of reader, or it's just not how I work. Yeah.
I like that. Well, is there anything else you want to share with us while you're here?
This is just so amazing, you guys. I'm so excited to be here. I was sitting.
Your time today.
This is amazing.
This has been great.
We get to fangirl over authors. Like that's the dream for us.
No,
So thank you for spending the time. Enjoy the festival.
Thank you so much.
Since you are from the area and have been a part of the festival before, what's something advice for a first timer?
Oh, I mean, there are so many great discussions, so many of the panels. You can turn up pretty much at any panel and then walk out having learned something interesting or valuable or thought-provoking. So I love the kind of idea of like a pick and mix bag where you're just sort of going into something and maybe you don't know anything about it. That's awesome. But I would say the secondhand book sale.
Yes.
There is that sort of stereotype of I don't know, shopping for certain things. For me, I love a secondhand book sale. I really do.
I do too. I have a favorite secondhand book shop where we live.
I love looking for dedications.
Oh,
So
yes.
if a book is if it's given as a gift and I find it in a secondhand store, I'll buy it because I like that memory is still important. That was important to choose. Yes.
The previous life of that book. I love that. Yeah.
It's beautiful.
Well, Christina,
Thank you
again
so
so much for being here with us.
We appreciate it.
The book is Wild Oak by C.C. Harrington, Christina.
Yes.
And we've got Rumpus here, of course. It's great. It's a children's book. This is for anyone. Anyone can read this. It's a really good read. And I do not say that about every book. I really don't. Please believe that. So thank you again. We have one more live this afternoon with Anthony Mara, who is actually the keynote here today at the Key School at the Annapolis Book Festival. Thank you again,
We'll be back, guys. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
65.
That's weird.
You're live.
Hi, everybody. We're back at the nope, those are not the words.
The Annapolis,
Annapolis
Book Festival.
Book Festival. We are here with Anthony Mara right now, and this is our last live of the day. And you are the keynote as well, right?
That's what we were told.
We were told you were the keynote.
Well, then I guess I am.
He's the keynote.
He's the
maybe.
maybe.
We don't know.
We're not sure.
He didn't get a fancy button or anything, so it's sus.
We do know he's the author of this book here, Mercury Pictures Presents.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to talk to you a little bit about this, and you have two other books.
Two other books.
And so thank you so much for coming on and meeting with us.
Thank you so much for having me. This is
cool.
so. I'm not sure if you all know out there, but you guys have been doing this for like
2 years.
10 hours
Yeah.
today.
Yes.
Like,
we were here very early before
We got here,
anyone else
yeah.
arrived this morning, and yes,
We set up. Tom set
I'm
up.
tired.
yes.
We watched Tom set up.
Yeah.
Because if we tried to help Tom set up, he said, "Don't touch that."
He has a system.
And that part of that system is us not being here.
a key part.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, this is a lot of extroverting. Like, I feel like even Molly's tired at this point, and she is our extrovert. Like,
Yeah, I pulled her out of the dinner last night.
What it is, I think, like, so I'm a very introverted person as well, and I think, like, one of the reasons that I've gravitated towards writing as a field is that I can just sort of lock myself in.
Well, your invisible friends talk to you.
Exactly.
But then
yeah.
I love my imaginary friends. They're freaking awesome.
But then how dare they? Your publisher's like, but you also have to go market this. Go do the things.
But I already gave you the product.
I gave you the book. Can't
Why do
people
you
just
want
read
more
it?
of me?
So, a little bit of information about Anthony Mara. He is the New York Times bestselling author of The Czar of Love and Techno, and which is
Such a wild name. I love it. Every time I hear it, I giggle a little bit. It's awesome.
and a constellation of vital phenomena. You are longlisted for a National Book Award, which is amazing, and winner of the National Book Critics Circle's John Leonard Prize. Wow, that's a mouthful. As well as Annisfield? How do I say it? I don't know. Sure, the Wolf Book Award in fiction. His latest novel is Mercury Pictures Presents, which is actually the book that Molly and I read, and it is historical fiction.
I know your favorite.
I know.
Your favorite.
She is not
genre.
a fan of.
You know what's really funny? So you are the fifth author we've interviewed today. Addison was historical fiction. Anthony's historical fiction. Cece was historical fiction. So of
Nina
the five,
was too, and she didn't
and
make
we
it.
had a sixth one who's out sick. So of the books, 3 of the 5 were
Well,
historical.
I can only apologize to you on my
yours.
and my colleagues.
The rest are my fault. I picked most of them.
I mean, I'm totally fine with it. I'll read whatever Molly picks. Sometimes I'll complain about it. But, it's fine. There's more to this book than history.
Yes.
And also, it's Hollywood is the backdrop, which is like
Super
really
interesting.
cool. Really cool.
Super interesting. It's a really interesting choice, especially for the setting
Yeah.
and the time frame.
Yeah.
I think that like settings. I don't know. I'm curious what you think as a fellow writer. Like, I feel like the setting determines so much of
It
the
does.
book in terms of like the
It
possibilities
does. Well,
and
and it can
tone.
set, it can set your tempo even.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? If you write with music or you're a writer that writes by doing research, it really depends and it sets the tempo. Like, I instantly will go to music. I go to media from that time frame. I have a book that I haven't finished. It's about bootlegging and in Vermont and how they created this hotel to bootleg out of. But I did all this research about it and I started listening to music from that time frame, and that set the pace for how my characters just related in life.
Yeah.
And it's a very interesting path because you have a very interesting tone in here. It's a very interesting tone. Honestly, I thought they were short stories that you put together.
So, do you want to give us a synopsis
Yeah,
of your book before we
absolutely.
start diving in a little bit further?
Yeah.
Just tell us what your book is about.
Yeah, so it's called Mercury Pictures Presents,
Yeah.
and it is set in Los Angeles and Italy, but mostly Los Angeles in the 1930s and 40s, and it's set in this sort of B movie studio called Mercury Pictures that becomes the sort of the nexus for this community of European refugees who moved to California in that era. And it focuses primarily on a character named Maria, who is, I imagined her as like Rosalind Russell's character in His Girl Friday, only a bit more salty and a lot more.
Yeah, she's salty. You got the salty.
Yeah.
Very salty.
She's very, and she has
salty.
reason to be salty,
Yeah,
my
for
girl.
sure.
Yeah.
So it's kind of this this wide-ranging book that looks at all of these characters who've come from across Europe, across the world, and end up in this one ramshackle studio when World War II begins.
It's a wonderful hodgepodge of how.
Wonderful hodgepodge. I feel like put that on the cover.
Yeah, a wonderful hodgepodge.
Yeah.
Because there are so many storylines you don't think they're going to intertwine, but they just magically.
Yeah.
You just have to wait for it.
Yeah, I love that sense as a reader when you're reading a novel and you can feel the these all of these parts that shouldn't go together and that seem like they're kind of just flapping in the breeze, and yet they gradually entwine and sort of weave a tapestry. I love that feeling.
Yeah.
And I mean, you literally stop in the middle of a paragraph and flash back to Italy and then come back to Hollywood. It's like it's like a memory. In paragraphs. Like it's happening.
It's like a memory
at the same time. Yeah. And I mean that's how we think, right? I mean that's you're living your life. You flash back. You're right back to where you were. So. I thought I think old Hollywood is awesome for a backdrop. It's just a great story to tell, and there's so much history there.
Yeah.
And there's another book right now that we've read that
is doing well.
Evelyn Hugo,
which is number 3 download, right? By the way,
yeah.
It goes the first episode, Jurassic Park gang and Evelyn Hugo.
Yeah,
I don't know why y'all.
Park.
What
What are you? What?
We'll talk about this later again, but
why?
Why?
Hold on, you have an episode on Jurassic Park?
We do, and it's like fighting for first place constantly.
Really?
Yeah.
Yes, it goes our first episode, our first book fight. Jurassic Park,
Evelyn Hugo and
then
Jurassic
Evelyn
Park
Hugo
are like fighting,
and they're in different seasons.
Because like I wouldn't have thought that there would be a mini crossover readers.
It's
right.
Yeah.
It's right. I think it's more of our personalities in that those episodes. I've re-listened to both. We're talking about our personal lives. We're bouncing back and forth. We're talking about the potential of, in Evelyn Hugo, it's the potential of a movie or a show, right? And in Jurassic Park, we're doing a comparison contrast of the books, how we interpreted the books from the movies, because we grew up with the movies.
English homework for them.
Yeah.
That's what happened.
Hold on. So what was your verdict on Jurassic Park the book?
I love the movies growing up. Like that was like, I'm graduated in
Dinosaurs.
2000, so like mid 90s. That was a movie, right?
I was in middle school when it came out, so yeah.
But the book, my issue with it is it's both too long and also so good at giving you all the in-depth information.
Yeah.
Like I loved all the science talk in it. I loved all the math talk in it.
See,
math is not my
the
thing,
math
but
goes over,
science was my thing.
My eyes glaze over.
All of the chaos theory.
Like I'm good with the death and the murder and the crazy animals, but as soon as you start putting infographics in there,
Murder over math.
Yeah.
Murder over math from Ollie.
I mean, I ask in part because I want this episode to so if we can ride the coattails of the Jurassic Park, but also like Michael Crichton was like maybe my gateway author as I was born in '84 and so like Jurassic Park, like the like that was a huge book for me, and I just remember as a kid, like I devoured every single book of his.
See,
when it came
that
out.
That was Good Omens for me in middle school. I opened Good Omens and I saw Neil Gaiman's writing style, and I go, "This is what I'm doing with my life."
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't really like Good Omens. We had an episode on that too.
So, why tell a war story in Hollywood?
Well, so I think that we've all probably read far too many World War II novels, right?
That's a thing.
That's why I don't like historical fiction, because I'm always like, it doesn't add anything. Like this is the same thing. A lot of historical romance, right? The woman on the cover with walking away. Why is that always a thing?
Yeah.
Right. Give us a face.
Yeah. Exactly. No. And I feel similarly. I mean, you can't walk into a bookstore without tripping over a stack of novels set in World War II. And yet I had never sort of seen a novel about the role that Hollywood played in sort of selling the war to the public.
And they did.
The propaganda that was produced, the ways in which Hollywood and the military sort of worked together, and it just sort of seemed like this fascinating sort of part of the Venn diagram of two worlds that people know very well, Hollywood and World War II, but yet this intersection seemed perhaps less well known. And so it felt like a really colorful, but also maybe slightly unknown, part of both of those histories.
Interesting. And it's some really great political commentary too, because you've got the studio is being, the people who are actually making the movies are mostly immigrants. Yeah. And they were being told that they had curfews and they weren't allowed to do certain things, and yet they're making movies about why you should support the war effort because the Nazis are doing that. They're telling people they can't do these things. So it's like that that duality that like this is our reality, but we have to tell people that this is not the reality. This is what they're doing over there. It's what the bad guys are doing.
Yeah, I mean, I think that World War II. One of the reasons I think it's so like mythologized in American culture is because it was maybe the last war where we were on like the good side.
Yeah, like we were the good guys.
We were the good guys. But I think one of the effects of that is that maybe we gloss over the ways in which we behaved quite reprehensibly.
Poorly, yes.
Towards, towards immigrants and refugees.
I mean,
who were
we had a variation of concentration camps in Alabama, internment camps.
Yeah.
George Takei.
There's a whole documentary about it, actually.
He was in the internment camp.
It's devastating.
So, and along that, so there's a lot of different races and ethnicities that are being overlooked in Hollywood currently. That's still happening. And this year, actually, the Oscar race, we had 3 winners that were East Asian descent. So they won Best Actors. So I keep thinking about this in terms of like Eddie's story, who's one of the characters. He's Asian, he's American born. So do you think Hollywood is working towards more inclusion? Do you think that's happening?
So Eddie is a third generation Chinese American Californian, and he's the only main character in the novel who's actually born in America. But because and he works as an actor, but because of the typecasting and pervasive racism that was certainly felt throughout Hollywood at the time, and in many ways extends to the present day. He only can get these roles playing big characters and these
and the bad guy.
Bad guy, exactly. And when America enters the war,
it just gets worse.
Yeah, he's suddenly given this opportunity to sort of have larger roles playing Japanese villains, and he sort of feels this real sense of moral paradox, where on the one hand he wants something out of this industry that has overlooked and marginalized him
and treated him terribly,
and he has this one moment where he has a bit of leverage, but the cost of that is to is in some ways to sell his soul.
And he's not even Japanese.
No.
And nobody seems to care.
No.
Well, you're Asian, so that's good enough.
Yeah.
And there's that angst that he's feeling like, I'm making really good money, but at what cost?
Right.
Yeah. I'm selling my soul
literally
to do this.
Yeah. And I think that one of the values. So I'm going to make a pitch to you for the value of historical fiction.
Okay.
Oh, so boy.
You're going to sell me.
Good luck. I'm going to sit back because I wish you luck because I've been doing this. I have been friends with this woman since 2009.
Well,
and I've been trying to get her reading historical fiction.
To be fair,
so
my favorite book is historical fiction.
Doesn't count. That is a classic. It doesn't count.
It does.
It doesn't count.
How dare you?
You heard me.
So my pitch for historical fiction is that oftentimes I think historical fiction that novelists working in that genre they are describing the period in which their books are written as much as the period in which their books are set.
That's fair.
And I think that by looking at the past, at trying to experience it in narrative form, it gives us maybe a way to contextualize and better understand what we're going through in the present, and to see some of the obstacles and divisions and political ruptures that we are experiencing today as part of a continuum in American history.
I think that's totally valid because.
But you still hate it.
No, it's not that.
No.
So my favorite book is To Kill a Mockingbird, which was written in the 1960s but set in the 40s.
Fine.
And that's exactly what Harper Lee was
Technically,
doing.
it's historical fiction.
It is historical fiction.
Sure.
So, I mean, that's exactly what she was trying to do. She saw what was happening in the 60s, in the South particularly. She was a person that grew up in the 40s in the South. And she created these characters that were basically based on small town life in the South and segregation and what would happen. She was making political commentary about today.
Yeah.
And one of the reasons I love that book is because it's still relevant.
Yeah.
And I used to be a teacher before I became a librarian. I was a high school teacher, and I taught in the middle of West Tampa. I had gangs in my classroom. I had kids that said, I've never finished a book before. And we read To Kill a Mockingbird together. And to watch them get so upset about Tom Robinson's conviction and be like, talking about the justice system and the way that it's still inequitable. And these are like high school kids. Like, that is why I deeply love that book. So, to be fair, my usual complaint with historical fiction is that I don't like when it's just a regurgitation of the same thing. And I don't think that's what this is.
No.
I don't think
this is a very original take on World War II.
Absolutely.
A very original take on World War II.
And the same thing with Addison Armstrong, who we interviewed earlier. Her book, The War Librarian, is a totally different look at librarianship, at being
World War
a woman
II?
in the military,
Or World War?
World War I. Like,
Mixing
when
things
you're
up
going to
now.
add to the genre, then I'm here for it.
Yeah.
I'm here for it, okay? So this is different, so I can be okay with it.
So since we're talking about research and all that, what was that like for you for this book?
Well, one of the great things about writing a book set in old Hollywood is you can sit on the couch watching a bunch of movies from the era and call it work.
Yeah,
so
it's awesome, right?
It was
Quality
a very painful research
I
process.
bet. I bet it was hard
It
took days.
Days
And months.
Still,
It was awful. I'm sure your family hates you for it.
Yeah. No, it was. I think that for me, one of the most pleasurable parts of being a writer is that you can kind of become an amateur expert on whatever you're interested in.
Yeah.
I'm an expert on bootlegging now.
Yeah.
And particularly in Vermont.
So, funny side story. When I started doing that research, I reached out to the Vermont Historical Society. And they had like this pamphlet book, and it was like $15. I ordered it by mail. I today still get Vermont Historical Society monthly mail on cardstock.
They really want her to finish the book.
They really they
really
really
want that.
just need donations. So
Yeah.
Vermont Life, donate to them. But it's funny how we get research and how it just takes us in a direction, because that this time was movies, but next time you may be, stuck neck deep in books for, months.
Maybe on the Vermont bootlegging.
Yeah.
He's
like, this is a great idea.
If he publishes that, we're pulling up the receipt.
Yeah, we
Here's
are.
your idea first.
He's like, it's brilliant. And it's yours.
No, I kept thinking about my favorite movie, which is Singing in the Rain. The whole time I was listening to the audiobook.
I was going to say Win a Date with Tad Hamilton, but...
Well, no. That is not my favorite movie. That is I've had a really crappy week movie.
Gotcha.
It's garbage. I don't know why I like it. But, Singing in the Rain, it's that iconic Hollywood backdrop, right?
Yeah.
It's the start of the talkies. And I just kept thinking about that being the insider knowledge of what gets made into a movie. And that's really my knowledge of old Hollywood. Hollywood likes talking about themselves a lot, though. So
They do.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I think it's I find Hollywood just fascinating because I think oftentimes in when it's portrayed in novels, it's portrayed as fundamentally sort of frivolous, silly place.
Yeah.
And yet I think by looking at how representation occurs, not just in terms of casting, but how America is represented on the screen. How this sort of image, this sort of like larger cultural image of what what Hollywood thinks we should value and what it thinks we should believe in. That it tells us so much about who how America sees itself, what we aspire to be, et cetera, et cetera. So I think that like looking at Hollywood is a way of kind of looking at the country at large.
Yeah, I agree. And along those lines, you weave together stories. A lot of it is fiction, but there are real life Hollywood actors that are in your book, like Bella.
Yeah.
Bella.
So Hungarian, I'm Hungarian, so I was like, yes, represent. but what made you decide to include some of the real Hollywood stars?
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm a huge Bela Lugosi fan, and I find him to be like kind of this really tragic figure in many ways.
It is.
Where he wants to he imagined himself like being this heartthrob.
Yeah.
And partially because of his accent. He wasn't able to be cast in any of those roles, but it also was in part because he was freaking Dracula. Like
it's hard to come back from that.
Yes.
Yeah. And
once you're typecast, you're typecast.
Yeah, and so he was like perennially this monster, and he had the opportunity to play Frankenstein, and he turned the role down because.
I get that.
Yeah, he didn't want. He wanted to not be a monster.
Hey, are you sure you just wasn't trying to hold out for the universe in which Frankenstein fought Dracula, like the extended horror movie universe?
I mean, we've got Alien versus Predator. Why not Dracula versus
Freddy versus Jason? Dracula versus Frankenstein. It's fine.
Well, they did. They teamed up in later movies in the 40s.
There you go. See,
but,
he was holding out.
Yeah, but he so he is a figure that I think like we know so well, but but his actual life is just fast. Anyway, so he and Eddie are friends.
Yeah.
Right.
And they have this sort of like afternoon together where they're kind of just discussing like what it's life and careers and what it means to sort of represent villains and what that does, like how that sort of corrodes your own your own psyche.
Yeah. And was he actually buried in his cape?
He was, yeah.
I couldn't find it. I was like, I want to fact check this, and I was like, and I couldn't find it. But I that stuck with me. I was like, he was buried in his cape.
Yeah, he had a good sense of humor.
I love it.
Yeah,
I love it.
So you have very distinct voices in this. Like each character is very distinct and could have carried the story on their own. Why did you choose to go multiple point of views?
I think that as a reader and as a writer, I love the idea of books, of novels being these big, sort of capacious places where many different lives can intersect and come together, and we can see how, just these tapestries of life get built, and I think that. Were I to tell this particular story, which is about the this wide cast of immigrants coming from all over to this one place, if I were to just tell it through one point of view or two or three points of view, I think it would have really you wouldn't have gotten that sense of all of these different backgrounds and all of this trauma and hope and whatever.
It's definitely the stories you do not think about when you think of World War II. When we think about World War II, we think Holocaust, we think people on the front lines, right? You're talking about people who were making media for the front. You're talking about miniaturists. Never thought about that. No. I never thought about somebody would literally need to make miniatures to... I mean, she ends up going to where they're building the atomic bomb. Yeah. And I'm just like... This is so fascinating.
Yeah, so this is another one of these characters who, were this to be a novel with a single point of view, she probably would have been relegated very much to the side. Yeah. She's a character named Anna, and she's a miniaturist, and she becomes involved in this real project called German Village, which was this sort of essentially. A life-size Berlin neighborhood that was built in the Utah desert in order to essentially try to figure out how to create a firestorm in Berlin. Yeah. And it's one of these sort of little sort of historical nuggets that I'd never seen fictionalized, and felt.
And she's not just a flat character. It's not just she's a miniaturist. We get more of her. We get that she's a German immigrant. We get the story of her son and her ex-husband. There's so much more than just she's building miniatures. And you're right. That can't be accomplished if you don't have those multiple POVs.
Yeah.
And I thought that was really, the miniaturist really got to me. I thought that is I never even think about people doing that. And like, I'm obsessed with Star Wars. Of course there are miniaturists.
Yeah.
Like, of course.
Yeah.
Like, like duh.
Yeah. How do you think they built the Death Star?
Duh.
So who came first? Who was talking to you first in this book?
It was Maria, who is the.
She is the strongest voice.
She is.
She is your strongest voice.
She is as much of a main character as the book has. And she, she's this sort of tough, irreverent striver.
She's so, and I'm saying this not to be negative, cold.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And
she has to be.
She has to be cold, and the coldness of her makes her more real to me. Because we don't write cold, distant characters. We want our characters to be liked. We write our characters to be wanted, so that they're talked about. And you purposely wrote her unlikable. You know what I mean? She puts people off. She talks hard to them.
But you know what? Sorry, I'm gonna have a side conversation here. I don't think you would say that about her if she was a man.
Facts.
She has to be a woman.
Yep.
Because if she comes in like a boss.
Yep.
And she's a man, that's a whole different character.
Yep.
That's a whole different character.
It's brilliant.
So.
And that's what you're getting, though. That's the point of this, though. Yeah. It's brilliant.
She's earned her place. She deserves the pay. She deserves the producer credit.
Not to be Jane Doe.
And I feel like she's a character who's constantly having to come up against the sort of the structural sexism that existed.
Structural sexism, I like that.
Yes.
In Hollywood and in America.
Life.
In general.
Yeah.
And she was actually the character that I got to draw on my own family from the most. So her three great aunts, Mimi, Lala, and Pep, are based on and named after my own great aunts.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah, and the restaurant where they work is my cousin's restaurant.
I love this.
So I feel like we all have a gaggle of aunts like that who are just constantly always talking over each other.
Well, mine are Hungarian, but yes.
Mine just
very similar.
Mine were more raised voices, but
yeah, that's really cool. And how did they feel about being in your book?
Well, they I had these three great aunts, Mimi, Lala, and Pep. They came from a family. They were three of 9 or 10, including my grandfather. And of that generation, half of them died in childhood. And essentially, all of them just received the names of older siblings who had passed away.
Wow!
So that's kind of how they dealt with death. Is you just pass the name on to the next one.
Well, that's one way to do it.
So when I was writing this book, I knew that I was going to base these aunts on my own, and the last of them, Mimi, passed away as I was writing this, and I realized that just as they had received their names from older sisters who had passed away, these characters would receive their names from them.
And somebody will use it.
Yeah.
Somebody's gonna see, oh, that's a cute name.
Yeah.
And use it. And they'll live on somewhere else in the world because of your
they'll
book.
live on here.
Yes,
Yeah.
and they live on because
I like that.
book characters are real characters.
Oh yeah, we talk about that a lot. They're real to us. So, okay, long listed for National Book Award.
Yeah.
Winner of still can't say the word Wolf Book Award.
Didn't change in the last 20 minutes.
John Lennon. That's what I said. John Lennon Prize. Good for you.
I thought he was dead, so congrats.
Oh my gosh. I'm so sorry. This
good.
is so unprofessional. So how does it feel to have people honor your work like that?
Yeah.
It's terrible.
It's awful, right? Gosh, why would they?
It's you work on a book largely, you know, locked in your room alone, and you're not sure if anybody is going to read it, let alone if anybody's going to like it. And so obviously, you know, to have readers who seem to to react positively.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
I mean, it's a dream come true. It's the best.
It's smart. It's a smart book.
It is. It's smarter than me. There were times I was like, I don't know if I have the educational background for this.
I love you, Molly. Yeah, I think that's, I mean, obviously that's what you want, right? You want people to receive it well, but you want critics to receive it well. You want, I mean, look at all of these people that have blurbed your book. I mean, that's what you want. But at the same time, you know, are you allowed to like actually say that you want that? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like,
I mean, I think everybody wants.
Yeah.
You know.
I mean, we all want published.
Yeah.
We all want to be on time.
we want someone to sponsor our podcast.
Seriously. Hashtag Audible, not sponsored. So I listened to the audiobook. Did you get to pick your narrators?
My publisher, the audio department, presented me with 3 or 4 possibilities. It needed to be somebody who could
do all the. They did an excellent job.
accents.
There was all the accents, the voices. It was spectacular.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so the narrator is actually is I believe a dual citizen.
Yeah.
Italian and
cool.
American, and she
was brilliant.
Yeah, she's wonderful.
She's brilliant.
She can do all of the all the
She
pronunciation.
was really good. It was really good.
What was great is because there are a lot of characters in this book. I mean, there are a lot. I need an audiobook narrator who can give me a voice for each one of them, so I don't forget who it is that I'm listening, that you're talking about. That's what I need.
Yeah.
She gave me that.
Yeah.
I could get that from her.
Yeah.
It was very distinct. Okay, it's this character. It's this character. You know. So. Yeah.
So who's your idol? Who do you chase? Because we all have one author that's like our keystone for the reason we started.
Yeah. So. I mean, besides Michael Crichton.
I was just saying
Mike Crichton.
No, I think it changes.
He's gone. He's passed. He's not writing anymore, so you can't chase him.
I think at different points, maybe you have different writers occupying that position. You know, somebody who I've greatly admired is over the years. You know, maybe the first one of the first writers of sort of like literary fiction that I really fell in love with was Edward P. Jones, who's a DC area writer, and is one I greatly admire. But it kind of, you know, on the one hand, I also love like Lee Child, you know. So I think it's like, you know,
It varies
times.
intense. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, because it can inspire our mood and tempo and how we write, and so it's always interesting to see. You know, from time to time.
What are you reading right now?
Yeah.
What am I reading right now? So I am reading. What am I reading? Oh, so I
Same. I don't know what I'm reading right now, honestly.
I just finished a book called Happiness Falls by Angie Kim.
Is it falls as in falling or falls as in like the waterfalls?
Like waterfalls.
Got it.
It's coming out in September.
We love arts.
She wrote Miracle Creek.
Okay.
Oh yeah.
And it's absolutely.
Is it good?
It's so good. I'm a very slow reader, and I read this book in like 24 hours.
Dang.
It's this about this family in the midst of COVID. The father goes missing, and the only witness to this is the son, who has a developmental disability in which he has trouble talking.
Oh wow.
Sold.
Yep.
And,
Sold.
And so it's a book about like language and how you know how we communicate. It's of all like the sort of pandemic set books. I feel like it uses aspects of the pandemic to like create this riveting plot. So like contract tracing becomes how like one person finds.
Oh, that's so cool.
Like the masks becomes a way for identities to be concealed.
Yeah.
And it just uses like these things that became part of our daily life during the pandemic.
Become part of a mystery portion.
Exactly.
That's awesome.
It's
That's
very
brilliant.
good. Yeah.
That
So
sounds brilliant. Well, we'll have to look out for it.
Yeah, I would definitely recommend that one.
Do you have a favorite book?
I don't really have a favorite book. I don't think.
Usually when people ask me what my favorite book is, I'm like, I don't think you're ready for this conversation. I mean, I do have a favorite book, but
we know what your favorite book is.
It is, for sure know what my favorite book is. But I read so much that I can never have a top 10. It's like a top whatever I'm reading right now. So
Depends on my mood, honestly.
But I've been reading a lot of romance novels lately.
You know, did you read? I read a couple of years ago. There's a book. I can't remember the name, but it's about Harper Lee's like last book, which was never published, but she spent like 40 years.
Are you talking about a book about that book or that book?
It's a book about her trying to write that book.
But I read Go Set a Watchman.
Okay, yeah. No, so this is about like a murder trial that she became obsessed with. It was this guy in is it Alabama? Is that where she's from?
Yeah.
Who essentially kept on like marrying people, and they kept dying, and he kept collecting the life insurance on them.
Yeah. Why did people keep marrying him?
It was like again and again and again and again, and finally
White man luck.
In the final whatever it was, like the 8th time he was tried for this, the brother of the victim in the courtroom just shot him.
No,
yeah,
that's amazing.
That's one way to handle it.
Justice was served.
Yeah, but she was like working on this book for like 40 years or something. Anyway, you might get a kick out of it.
She never needed to publish again. She won a Pulitzer with her first book. She was kind of a recluse a little bit. She didn't need to publish another book. She was like, mic drop, I'm out.
Yeah.
We probably would, in the publishing world today, I don't think she would have ever gotten away with that.
No.
They'd have been like, you have a deadline.
Get
it done.
Because they would have made her sign a 4-book deal.
Oh, for sure. Oh, for sure. So do you have anything else you want to share with us? You have already done your panel.
I've done my panel.
Is this your first time here?
It's my first time here. I hope not my last. It's
us too.
That's what we feel.
Lovely event.
We're gonna, when we wrap up with you, we're gonna go over to the bookshop.
Yeah.
They have quite a few.
I don't know if my husband knows we're doing that, but that is what we're gonna do.
We appreciate your time today.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you. This was such a treat.
Yeah, love this. If you ever want to come back on again,
you're welcome.
You have our email.
Yeah.
Will do. Thank you.
Right. Okay, everybody, that's it for today. We are all done with live streaming.
Hasta luego.
And we hope you enjoyed. Thank you again, Anthony, for meeting with us.
Yeah.
And we'll see you next week. Bye.